precisely what's going on. And on the one hand, it's great to see. On the other hand, it's horrifying that it's necessary.
This has been a really bad week.
Yeah. Overall, the expectation that that in any way, Donald Trump gave a crap about Puerto Rico or even knew it was part of the United States is fodder for much important debate. And I agree that there is really something to that argument that he didn't know or doesn't care to know. However, there is a very strong chance, because he owned a golf course there, that this is a great way to rid the place of poor people and turn it into a much more high dollar, offshore experience for vacationers. That if you can literally purge the weak and poor, those real estate values go up. Yeah. And remember when initially when I was running, there was this idea that this guy, he didn't really want to win. He wants to, during, he wanted the briefings that come with running, right? And then from those briefings, you could actually, make all kinds of real estate and business decisions. The stuff that you learn by being briefed by the Secret Service and by the DOD and all the ancillary, secretary and cabinet level positions within the government give you a lot of information that as an investor would qualify as insider trading on all fronts, which, by the way, will bring us to the story of Tom Price leaving, by the way, who, was allowed to resign, right? This was the story. And who can forget that pithy phrase from The Apprentice that Trump was always using, "You will be allowed to resign with benefits."
Just rolls off the tongue.
It does. It's like he would just say that and he would point to Brett Michaels or somebody and go, "You will be allowed to resign." Gary Busey, you've done very badly in my farcical make a lemonade stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, where, by the way, I could shoot someone and my followers would love it as long as they were brown. And Gary Busey, you have done terrible with your lemonade stand, so you will be allowed to resign. So Tom Price was allowed to resign. Now, there's been renewed interest in a story about Tom Price that was amazing that he was allowed to take this position in the first place, that he was confirmed because he was tied up in this pump and dump penny stock scheme, where as the director of the health committee, effectively just raised the values of stocks knowingly, bought into them, and then undermined them in committee so that the stock price would go down, or vice versa. He would buy them when they were low and then artificially inflate them while he was in there, and then he would sell them at a high price before they tanked out because it was based on nothing. So now, he gets busted for this, using, private jets to go everywhere because allegedly he was late for one meeting. And so that was the impetus. Well, that's it. I'm flying private from now on. And he has offered to pay back his seat, even though he's bringing staff and family. They're not releasing currently everybody else who was on that plane with him on those trips. But if the other members of the cabinet are indicative of what was going on, I forget which one was going on the snorkeling trip, but these guys are literally taking advantage of the very fact that they are treating this like a royal position. This whole drain the swamp nonsense, where we're going to go in there and we're going to spend your money right, and I'm going to spend all my time working, and just every single statement the president made to to this alleged group of white working class people that he supposedly appeals to, all of it's a lie. I suppose, except the part about being bigoted, which is probably the last thing they're clinging to. Well, he may have lied about helping me with. He might raise my base tax rate, and he might have lied about golfing all the time, and he may not have gotten any of his agenda to. But he's still sufficiently mean to brown people. So I'm still with him. MAGA. Right. So in looking at this, the scandal that is breaking, with Price stepping down, and it turning out that, now they're turning over every rock in this administration to find out who was flying on the taxpayers' dime in private jets. Yeah, everywhere. This won't be the last of it, by the way. Planes are just the first of it. And Price stepping down, by the way, all the people who are saying, he was fired or whatever, no. He doesn't get to be, you don't get to use the phrase fired when we're talking about this president when someone is allowed to resign. I'm sorry. But if that's the guy's branding point, you don't give him extra points for not following through on that branding, right? You just, I don't buy it. Okay, so then, so this breaks over the last, 48 hours, effectively, that the lead up, and then we get to the point where he's saying, Bryce is a wonderful man, he's a good human being, fired. Right, so that's, as soon as he starts praising someone's humanity in his cabinet, they're going to lose their job. We know this. This is the pattern currently. And then, as I'm kind of prepping today to talk about all this stuff that's been going on, and quite frankly, his lackluster response to the, to what's going on in the, in Puerto Rico, he lets loose this tweet storm this morning. Did you see this? Did you see the whole run? The mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, had now been told by the Democrats that you must be nasty to Trump. Such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything done for them when it should be a community effort. 10,000 federal workers now on island doing a fantastic job. Okay, the unbelievable ignorance, bigotry, and hatefulness for people who have literally been, a lot of the people who aren't showing up with trucks, for example, this is exactly who he's talking about, are digging their own families out of rubble while drinking septic creek water. And as part of his response, the awareness that, and they knew this, by the way, the awareness that there would not be people available that have trucks or to drive trucks, largely because those trucks were on the island when the storm hit and therefore are not drivable, or they are unable to reach the drivers because they are busy trying to help people within their, a walking distance, because they can't get fuel and they can't get anywhere, and there are no cell towers. The guy who the general who headed up our response, who came out, I guess, last week and just called this BS, Trump's response on this, was basically crying out, going, you have to drop cell towers. You have to bring in these mobile cell towers. Otherwise, he's like, these people are so lazy, they won't even pick up their waterlogged phone with no charge and get to their truck with no diesel and get in it and drive it on a road that isn't clear to get to a place where they don't even know stuff exists. Like, that's honestly what his expectation level is of this. Instead of saying, this is a responsibility of the federal government because this place has been decimated, to send in truckers as well. To send in, and by the way, they're starting to pour in now, 5 days after the response should have been at its apex. There is a severe window where deaths caused by this over the next 4 days will be directly linked to the Trump administration's intentionally, it seems, slow response on Puerto Rico. We got to take a break. When we come back, there was a pool report on Trump's prep for what was coming to Puerto Rico, knowing the category of the storm, knowing they had already been hit once, knowing that it was going to be the worst thing to hit the island, and their response after this. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. And hi, chat room. How you doing? Yeah, I have to find this. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, here it is. Oh, hi guys. Thanks so much. Thank you, Carl. Thanks. And to your mother. And to your mother. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Amos. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Ernie. Right on. The only, well, we'll talk about it. Believe me, I'll start getting. Does everything still sound okay, guys? Lady B? Johnny? Thank you, TLK Knitting. Oh, is there a humming? I don't know why that would be. Is there sonically, is there an issue? If there's an issue, is a tissue. Okay, there's no sound going in there. Check. Hey! Is that a little better? I don't know. Let's see, maybe bring the. Is that? Still hear humming. Oh, good. It must be a Canadian thing. There's no humming coming from. Are you wishing me a happy birthday, fix box? Or is this some sort of... What? Hey, are we back? Do you hear me? Oh, look at that. I can hear, you guys can hear me, but I can't hear you. I'm going to try and reconnect there. Beg your pardon. 100%. All right. Hey, are you there? Can I hear you now? Chicago? Fantastic. Oh, I somehow hear you. That's very strange. Well, all right. Let's see if, is that a little better? Are you there? Hey!
I can hear you, but can you hear me?
I now can hear you. Look at that. That was such a very strange moment.
Okay.
It's clearly Russian interference. I know that that's the case, and I'm going to say it again and again just to cover my own butt. So, anyways, we're back. Fantastic. And
okay, not yet. You're going to come back in 1
Oh, okay, yeah.
and 40 seconds.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay,
I'm going
great.
to tell you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, good. Whew. Perfect.
20 seconds.
Great. Ding.
3, 2, 1.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
We're back, and I can actually hear Johnny Million as well. Johnny, are you there? Right on. Maybe I can't. Can I? Is he there? There he is. Hey, look at that. I was starting to... It's funny because I can always tell when there's an issue because you start pinging my phone, and that reminds me that I haven't turned the ringer off on it, which is probably a good thing in these circumstances.
Yes, don't turn the ringer off on me.
No,
let me throw some VIP or something.
That's right. Yeah, you got to be in my get past do not disturb list.
Yes.
Okay, so Holly O'Reilly on Twitter, who goes by the uses the hashtag or the Twitter name Ayn Rand Paul Ryan. She was talking to a source of hers that she received a DM from. She goes, I received a DM from a vetted source who wishes to remain anonymous. She's not saying who, was on a conference call with FEMA on Monday, September 25th. My birthday, by the way, which was 5 days ago. And this is 5 days after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. Okay, this is already when the damage is abundantly obvious, okay? And on the phone call were the U.S. Coast Guard, Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense, Northern Command, National Guard Bureau, Defense Logistics Agency, Federal Insurance and Mitigation Administration, FEMA, ESF, External Affairs, DHS, and the NSC, okay, among others. Then after every department reported their activities and projections, it was time for the White House to issue their report. 4. White House answer, no report. No activity, nothing planned for Puerto Rico.
What?
We were all stunned, this source said. Meaning until Monday the 25th, nearly a week after Hurricane Maria made landfall, the White House had no plans to make any moves in Puerto Rico. While DOD, FEMA, all government agencies and non-government agencies were ready to go and had already started activities on the ground. She goes, this is worse than Katrina. Bush was inept and unprepared. Trump just does not give a something about brown people, period.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, this is a... And there's an article in LatinoUSA.org. Maria's death toll in Puerto Rico is being underreported. It's horrific what is going on down there. And the White House didn't even plan on offering any kind of coordinated. I mean, this is, you can, on the one hand, you can say this was an act of bigotry on the part of this president. And there's a strong case to be made for this. But you can also make the case that this is what an outsourced presidency looks like. That this is what it looks like when you have a lazy second-generation rich kid who got out of Vietnam because he had bone spurs and ultimately managed to capsize casinos. The man made the House always wins except when the Trump organization runs it. And literally, this man's companies were bailed out by the Russians. This is the thing that I think really needs to sink in for people who think that Donald Trump is a successful businessman. A successful businessman does not need to rely on money that was laundered that came from literally the gutting of the Russian economy by uber-rich oligarchs who are venting that money out into hidden accounts, pouring it into their own coffers, at the expense of the Russian people, by the way, who live on about $9,000 a year max. That's the average income for a Russian citizen. With the resources that they have and the amount of billions that are being poured out of that country is a crime against them. And Donald Trump's entire organization, his entire business, would have failed years ago if he wasn't bailed out by criminal Russian funds. That's not a successful businessman. Successful business people don't need to be bailed out by people who order people to spray poison in a journalist's face.
You sound jealous.
I am. That's what it is. Kim Jong-un has it so sweet. Ill, sir. Kim Jong-il has it so sweet. He's got a stupid haircut, and nobody in that country makes fun of it. Unlike here, where the unfair press get to make fun of it. He gets to shoot them, sir. That's awesome. Donald Trump is not a successful businessman. Successful business people do not need drug money and money and blood money to bail out real estate ventures that suck to start with. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Thank you. Who's in there? Mark, thank you very much. Who was I work with in Radio Pier Noon? Afternoons being buried next to Maryland, the first playmate. That's no joke. That's great. Oh, I know he didn't have bone spurs. I agree. I should have said claimed to have bone spurs, but I was on a tear. I beg your pardon. I'll correct that. He's good at lending his name. Yeah, Vickery, that is literally a his business model currently. It's a branding exercise. Yeah, hi Julie. How's your ears? Are you healing? I might talk about my New Year's resolutions after the show today, if I have time. No, my birthday was Friday, Lord Dracul. Thank you. But I understand why you might have gotten the date wrong because you've been alive for 1,000 years. So they all kind of blend together. Birthdays don't have the same meaning. Yeah. See my message about Second City. I did not, Carrie. I beg your pardon. Where did you send it? On Facebook or how did I celebrate? I do my Summer and I had a lovely night in. That was our, it was really nice. But I also, my band played on Tuesday, and we went, and then I sang in the jam afterwards as well. And then it was Monday the 25th. That's why, if you'll remember earlier in the first segment, I said, my birthday was the 25th. So, what is the name of the woman on that conference call?
20 seconds.
I can't say Seattle. It's that woman.
Can you hear me? 20 seconds.
Yes, I heard you. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
Don't do that to me.
I'm kidding. That's a joke. Everything's fine. Lady B.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So,
really not fair.
What's not fair? Me messing with you guys during the break?
You're fake cut out.
With
it just happens all the time.
I know. It's not really a joke worth doing currently. Like when things are smooth, it might be funny, but right now it's so. Ryan Zinke, is that how you say his name? Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke.
I have no idea.
Yeah. He chartered a flight from Las Vegas to near his home in Montana this summer aboard a plane owned by oil and gas executives. Internal documents show the flight, along with private flights during a trip to the Virgin Islands, could propel Zinke into the growing debate over the costs of travel by cabinet secretaries, some of whom have chosen expensive charter jets and military planes at high expense to taxpayers over the cheaper option of flying commercial. In June, Zinke and his staffers took a 4-hour flight from Las Vegas to Kalispell, Montana, aboard a private plane owned by the executives of a Wyoming oil and gas exploration firm, aviation and business records show. The landing in Kalispell put Zinke a short drive from his home in Whitefish, Montana, where he spent the night, documents show. The flight cost taxpayers $12,375. According to an Interior Department spokesperson, commercial airlines run daily flights between the two airports and charge as little as $300. The new flight details show how Zinke has mixed political gatherings and personal destinations. This is, by the way, why when Tom Price, in trying to cover his butt, was saying, "I'll pay for my flight on the plane." This was his way, this is his way of getting out of, I'm going to reimburse the taxpayer. Hoping that you wouldn't notice that he's not mentioning who else was on the plane. That effectively planes end up being a great place to have off-the-record lobbyist meetings.
Nice.
Because, very seldom are people asked, hey, who was on that flight as well? Now, the president's been doing this with golf carts as well. You get a ride in the presidential golf cart, and you get to run around all you want, with him. And nobody, and Mar-a-Lago and all these other places won't say who his golfing partners are or were, right? All this swamp draining that is happening on golf carts. I mean, horrific. Anyways, so the president, do you buy the fourth level chess argument ever with this man, Johnny?
Oh my God, no. No, he reacts to things that happened 5 minutes ago,
right?
Not like 4 moves ahead.
The only thing I think where that might work is that other people know this about him, and they release him like a feral cat into a room full of birds in an attempt to distract. You know, that there's this idea that he will just...
It's the whole Alabama NFL thing. Somebody was just like, hey, you know, things are getting ugly. Let's distract.
Yeah. Well, and all they have to do is walk into the president's office and get him going on a tear, get him wound up, and he'll just go like a top.
Yeah, they can just, you know, I saw this guy who was called for an illegal blow, and I tell you, like 10 years ago, they wouldn't have made that call, but now...
Give me my phone.
What about that Kaepernick guy?
Hand me this phone. 1 second. Low energy, boring football. Don't hit hard enough. Too many complaints about concussions. And P.S. These people who are brown do not understand how sweet they got it.
There is a level of like malevolence that.
A malevolent order.
Yes, that it's curious to me because I don't think he's. Okay, I've always believed that to be a successful politician, you must be at least partly Machiavellian. That you have to be, aware of.
Is this about John Malkovich or not?
No, this is not Malkovichian.
Okay, all right. I feel that I'm not the only one who needs some clarification.
Okay, but without the history lesson, being Machiavellian means being politically and arguably, depending on how you use it, psychosexually manipulative. That you have to be aware.
To do with John Cusack.
Right? No, this is
all
now,
right.
Right now we're getting into Grosse Pointe Blank. No, the idea.
You brought up a whole other thing. How much does this have to do with Grosse Pointe Blank and Minnie Driver?
Quite a lot, actually. Now that you bring it up.
All right,
so
I'm done.
All right. The idea is that if you are Machiavellian, you have to be a schemer. You have to. There is no innocent politician because it is an innocent act. It is not. You can't be. Politics in and of itself, because you're dealing with the wants and needs of so many disparate people, that you can't argue that for your position without going, okay, if I say this out loud, these people are going to freak out. So what I'll do is I'm going to couch this in this and try to make them understand. You can argue that it's why Jesus spoke in parables. There's a point, in the New Testament where he's like, yeah, I don't speak directly because you guys wouldn't get it. So I speak in parables because that's the kind of dumb you are. Is effectively the argument. And so, but the idea is that in politics especially and in business, a certain amount of Machiavellian level cunning is necessary to get anywhere, right? It's just understood. There are no innocents in this. That certain people, at some point as a politician, you're going to have to make this, you're going to have a moment where you say something that is, to be false to get something to be true. Is the nicest spin I can put on it, right? Yeah. And it is just the general idea that there is going to be, you're going to have to be cunning on almost a shameless level at some point to be a politician. And I've always argued that most people, when they find themselves in a political, will at least have a moment where they're like aware of that decision having to be made. And I think a good example is Obama wanting to be out front about supporting gay marriage, and Axelrod and all these people, and it's in Axelrod's book, are saying, look, if you do, you're not going to get elected. And the guy who will make sure it never becomes the law will get elected. You want it to get... Right. You don't want it to be legal? Okay, you're going to have to play this game. And the game is you're for civil unions, and you've always thought that marriage is between a man and a woman, but you're evolving on the issue. This is your conversation. And the reality is, I'm not evolving on the issue. I know full well I think it should be legal. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's wrong that it is a problem. But if you say that overtly, you're not going to get elected, and the bigot will. So what do? Do you go down in flames and go, I'm going to speak for what's right, and hope that, maybe 8, 10, 15, 20 years from now, somebody who, rides on the coattails of what you said, that was a real turning point for the American public, when he lost, when that guy lost because he came out for gay marriage. We didn't have gay marriage for another 20 years, but it was a nice moment, Or you go, all right, I'm going to play this game so that I can get in, and as much as it turns my stomach to not be open and honest about this, if I don't, it'll never happen. That's the upside of the Machiavellian aspect of politics, playing the game, as it were. Other people are completely like the Dick Cheney level of stuff, which is just the manipulation of public sentiment and the manipulation of intelligence to get what they want on this weird, 14th century Russia kind of level stuff, where they're just, undercutting the court and making sure that they have control over, certain people. And if they don't quite match what you need, or you're not getting what you need from some, weird minister of such and such, you have him snuffed on his wagon ride, to another country. And I've always argued that the politicians need a certain amount of this, except for Trump. Trump is simply the perfect storm of self-involvement. That he doesn't have to be manipulative in his I'll do whatever's good for me. There's almost a purity in how he does it. That whatever's good for him in that moment is truly what's good for him. He is literally a dog on a choke chain that thinks it's his idea not to walk into traffic. For me, he stands out as the one politician that doesn't sort of fit that bit. But the question becomes, well, then who is holding the chain? And that's become the big fight on the right. And we're going to talk about that when we come back. How's that for a tease? There you go. 773-763-9278 is our number. We'll be back right after this. Oh, man. Did I drop off? Did I disappear? Wait a minute. I did. Damn it. Really? Really? Son of a... Oh, man. I was on such a roll. That sounds great. Now what? I think this is okay now. Oh my gosh. I was on such a roll, and then I lost him again. Damn it. Hello? Are you there? Oh, I'm back. Here I am.
What? Hello?
I hear you. Look at that. It's a miracle. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Like a Cylon.
I sound like a Cylon right now? Oh.
A little bit.
What the heck? Ugh. So aggravating. I don't know. In the middle of my whole conversation, I was like, it's super quiet. Johnny's not even agreeing with me. He normally agrees with my coffee.
He's not even giving me the old.
The old what? All right. Are we back and on the air as well? By the way, just so
yeah, everybody hears this.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Sorry, I dropped off there for some reason. For some reason, we just can't even... I think it's... I'm going to blame it. I'm going to blame... and right as I was making this rant about how Trump's not a, fourth-dimensional chess player or whatever, we'll find out, some sort of... Remember those jokes about Reagan where he's like, I'll pretend to be doddering, and then behind the scenes, like he was sharp as a tack, He was running everything, and he was in control of every minute detail of the government. And then he would go out, well,
hello,
in front of everybody. So, all right. The point I was making before I so rudely disappeared was that as Trump is this kind of egomaniacal, he's this, he's a dog on a choke chain who thinks it's his idea to not go into traffic, right? And the question becomes, who's in charge of the chain? Who's pulling the chain? And right now, thanks to the bizarre Roy Moore, Big Luther Strange fight in Alabama, there's a genuine question about this. That going into 2018, who is going to be the driving force between the re-election, attempt by Republicans in 2018? Will it be the Bannon field or will it be the McConnell crowd? And they are definitely at odds about this. And for me, I kind of honestly don't care. I don't think that ultimately they're going to that either one of them will be selling something the American people are feel like buying at this point. Simply because there is a and I keep checking in with you, Johnny. You're gonna have to be more than ever on this one. I'm gonna start asking you questions.
You would really hope.
Yeah. That thank you. That there's a the anti-establishment storyline, which is what shepherded Trump into office, created the division in the Democratic Party in a lot of ways. This idea that somehow just the word establishment became a bad word, even though the Constitution establishes a form of government. There's something to be said for steady functioning government, especially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know how that became the bad word.
And well, we find that a lot of Russian Facebook and Twitter handles were really pushing it as a negative. It is tied directly to their secessionist language that they also push. And there are enough people, it's 330 million people in this country. That means there's at least 1 million of them that are willing to dive whole hog into this argument and create as much trouble as possible for themselves. And the question going forward, I think, is will the anti-establishment rhetoric work another time? Will it work again in terms of this? Or is it now a tired phrase from a couple of years ago? Is it so 5 minutes ago it won't last? And then what will? What is it then the white nationalism on the right becoming a genuine rallying cry, and on the left will it be the idea of, I guess, single payer as a sole strategy for getting for vetting a candidate? And that's a genuinely important question for the strategy that will be involved in us going forward.
Yeah, and then what does that campaign look like? God, it just bums me out, man.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. There is no upside to this in terms of people electing, any kind of steadied governance. You basically, all it does is set you up for constant turmoil because of the insistence on just like upsetting the apple cart as a norm as opposed to a solution, right? Because upsetting the apple cart when the whole apple cart is poison and they're taking it to a schoolyard is a great idea, if you're going to carry that analogy. Upsetting the apple cart because there's a few rotten apples in it and starving everyone who was expecting the apples makes no sense. And it really comes from a laziness of not wanting to weed out and check each apple, right? If we're going to use that, barrel down on that. And that's where we are in a lot of ways. It's where the Trump voters find themselves. It's where a lot of progressives can find themselves as well. This idea that, like, just baby out with the bathwater on both sides. And I think after, if there's an upside,
People are going to miss that baby.
yeah, kind of. I think
It's
so.
a pretty nice baby.
It's a pretty nice baby, right? And I think the idea that this is what was sold. This is the wrecking of the U.S. government is at root, tearing it out by its roots, is what was sold to the American people, and a large portion of voters who make up that pivotal middle and the extremes of the right and left made a very distinct choice during this election cycle, and this is the ramification. The Puerto Rico response, the ICE roundups, the billionaire tax cut, the raising of the tax rate on lower income people from 10 to 12. This is it. This is not, there is no point where you genuinely upset that apple cart, okay? There's no, this idea of, we got to rock the boat. We got to let people know we've got real problems and the solutions aren't happening fast enough. So we need a revolution. And this, unfortunately, the revolutionary idea has been hijacked in such a way that it only upset the apple cart, it had it filled with poison ones. And it's being delivered to Puerto Rico right now. This is the reality of when your entire strategy is anti-establishment, and instead of being anti-corruption or getting...
I have an anti-corruption. She's not cool.
Yeah, she's... Well, how do you know? I mean, I wouldn't trust her anyways, even when she's being nice.
She acts cool and everything seems okay when you just, glance.
Uh-huh.
But, when you get to know her, you stay at her house and everything, you're like, that's not my uncle.
That's right. There's a different person in here every week. She'll literally have anyone over if she can make money off it. My anti-corruption.
Seems that way.
But this is a reality. This is what happens when, and there's multiple elements firing here. There are multiple elements going on here. The difficulty voting, the gerrymandering, the strategy of shifting the Supreme Court to the right over decades, which Republicans and the far right have been pushing as their primary goal in entirety, because they believe it's not the law that's against them, but the judges. The Republicans believe that there is a way to interpret the Constitution so that not everyone is equal. They believe this, and they think it's unfair when judges do it. They think it's unfair when judges look at the Constitution and say, yeah, no, this should equally apply to everyone. And so they think if they get the right judge in there, they'll be able to change that, which is amazing.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and terrifying. But it is genuinely what they believe. This is the structured attack of the Republicans in many ways. The structured attack of, I guess, the far left would be that equality itself is as selective, but will be judged by a litmus tests and whatnot for everyone. You must be vetted to toe the party line in totality, or you are villainous. You do not disagree because you disagree. You disagree because you are evil, bought and paid for, and a mole. And that's a really unhealthy way to try to govern a democracy. And it gets seized. It gets seized.
Sorry.
Thank you. It gets seized by the right in many ways. This is where they get their whole.
The problem with the left. The problem with the left is that they are totalitarianism and fascist in their own way. This is where the true fascism, true totalitarianism is. They're like, no,
we're trying to do hardline standards that keep as many people alive as possible. It's hard not to be hardline on those elements. That being said, we have a responsibility for judging people on their character, and if they disagree with us about something, allowing for that. If they share a principled stance, it's a difficult road to walk, but a necessary one. And going into 2018, it will be more important than ever, because the result of just being slash and burn anti-establishment, or using the word revolutionary when what you really...
Now, my anti-establishment, on the other hand...
Yeah, she's always there for you.
Totally.
She's constantly over. As a matter of fact, I wish she'd go home sometimes.
We get it.
Uh-huh.
You love us.
And don't get me started on my Antifa. She's just rude. House is always on fire. I don't even know what her face looks like.
It's like she doesn't like any fascists at all.
No. And, I mean, honestly, they're very smartly dressed, right? Wasn't that the one, the Google dude or whatever? Like, say what you will about the Nazis, but they had lovely uniforms. And the only reason people don't want to join the Klan is because of the stupid names, right? No, it's the opposite. People want to join the Klan because they have such cool names. Grand Wizard, right? Yeah, that's exactly
Wow.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break. Hopefully we will be smoother in the second hour sonically. My fingers crossed. I hope. Thank you, Johnny. Right on. We'll be back right after this. It's the Housemarks Radio program, Mega World, or will we? Dun dun dun. So, I retweeted the thread from the woman about Puerto Rico just now. So you should have it. Mike in Milwaukee was asking for it on Twitter. Hashtag HSRPM. Okay, just scrolling back through. Okay, now I'm going to chat room. Hi, chat room. There you go. Oh my gosh. Oh, thanks, EO. I appreciate you making a happy ending call. It's super necessary these days, considering. So I'm backing up my... Okay. I have no idea why the other transmitter dropped out on my bit, so... And we're back. Gonna have to bump the happy ending. Yeah. Sorry. Hello, Lady B. I heard you immediately. Just so you know. Okay. And is this charging? No, it is not. So. I'm gonna disconnect and reconnect. Okay. Fingers crossed. Oh, ow. Oh, that felt good. That was nice. What? Check one. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear. Lovely.
Okay.
I don't know why, but this
Good.
this iPod Touch is louder than the other one that I run through. It's so weird. It's nothing I don't know.
Okay.
It's a mystery.
So you still got about 2 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Oh. Billy. Okay. Nothing there. Energy's going to this one. I don't know what, like, today's Mercury's not in retrograde. I don't understand what could possibly be. Yeah. And now,
A minute and 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm. I think people shouldn't have to declare a party to vote in a primary, but they should only be allowed to vote in one primary. That's my rule.
40 seconds.
Carrie, I did not see your post, but I don't know where you mean. On Facebook, Twitter, where is it?
$30 seconds.
I'm here, all's well.
$10 seconds.
I have come here to...
What?
AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
do the bind.
So, after the big week... thank you, Johnny Million. You knew about the Price story, right? You knew about him charging all these plane tickets and... like these private jets.
And Rachel Maddow was keeping tabs on it, and it just kept getting more interesting.
Right.
She's like, keep an eye on this one.
And it turns out Ryan
Don't
Zinke
know.
and all these other guys in Trump's administration were doing exactly the same thing. Here's the interesting thing about Price's departure. So the Trump administration Thursday delayed again, by the way, implementing a rule that would punish drug manufacturers for knowingly overcharging low-income and vulnerable Americans for prescription drugs. The rule was created in 2010 under the Affordable Care Act to protect hospitals from being overcharged on prescription drugs that are supposed to be discounted under a program known as 340B. The program, which dates back to the early 1990s, you were going to make a 340B, is that like room 237 in The Shining kind of thing, or we'll work on it. Anyways,
That's exactly what it is.
That's right. The program, which dates back to the early 1990s, this is from Mike, by the way, Networking Inc., is essentially an agreement between. Is essentially
You're going full Cylon, my man. Never go full Cylon.
never. I apologize for going full Cylon. My bad. Am I okay now? Is it better now in any ways?
No, not at all.
Oh no! Come on, really? All right, resistance is futile.
Seriously.
That's all I say. Okay.
Yeah, nice.
All right. So, hold on one second. But is it getting any better, or should we take an early break and fix it? I don't know. I think we're okay. Yeah? No?
I think we might need to do a quick break here.
All right. We'll take. Hold on 1 second. Just wait 1 second. Don't quite take the break yet. I promise. I promise to be right back in this circumstance. Oh, I guess not. Something's off today in connection. Bugging me. Ah. I hear you just fine. That's driving me nuts. I don't know what the deal is. I'm going to have to call in or something at this point. If anything gets wonkier as it goes. Can you hear me now? Is it clearer now? Hello? Check one. Check one. Nothing.
Please help me.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, but you sound robotic still.
Really? Oh, I
Okay,
think.
wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Say something.
Hello, check one. Hello?
Okay.
Check one.
Okay. A little bit better.
All right. A little bit. Well, we'll see. Hold on. 1 second. I'm like, it's just pulling teeth today. What the hell?
Okay.
Yeah? What? Hello? Yes?
Okay, much better.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. You're super quiet, so I think whatever channel you're sending to me on is super quiet for whatever reason. Yeah.
It is. Can you hear? You can't hear me?
I can hear you. You're just very light. I don't know why. When I switch the transmitters, it for whatever reason this channel's way lower. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'll turn it up. We're okay.
Okay.
There you are. There you go. That's better.
Okay. There you go. And you sound great. Oh my God! Thank you.
Oh God.
And we have about
What the hell?
a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's just one of the, it's like, yeah.
Ten seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
All right. I don't know how much of my breakdown of the 340B thing even heard before I went 100% Cylon.
Yes. What did you change? Now you sound like I'm getting a lot of room ambience. What's going on?
Oh, do I sound like sexy and full? Is it? I don't. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
And now you sound like 3 feet away, like you're miking just off the axis.
Wait a second. This better be going through.
Uh-oh.
Is that better? Hello? Check. One. You all right? No?
Yeah, don't touch a thing.
All right, I'm not
Don't
touching.
touch a thing.
All right, I'm not moving. Okay. So the point I was trying to make. Okay, so Tom Price, flying planes, charging the U.S. taxpayer. We're already there. Tom Price is on the edge of getting fired, allegedly.
You're going to be allowed to resign. Get out of here, Brett Michaels.
And he, on Friday, he steps down, and, kind of, midday, so it's still a, news thing. It wasn't totally a hide or whatever. Well, it turns out, before he left town, before he got out of Dodge, he he did one little thing as he was leaving. And this is a guy, by the way, who has been busted for a pump and dump stock scheme and didn't do any,
Sounds really gross.
It does. Sounds totally gross and totally rude. But effectively, while he was, I guess chairing the committee on the health, I forget the name of the actual committee on health or whatever, but while he was chairing it, he was involved in this, artificially inflating stock prices and then selling them at a higher price, and it's clearly manipulative. It should have precluded him from being able to be confirmed in a cabinet. Well, it turns out he did basically the same thing when he left. He delayed for, I think, the fourth time. The Trump administration has delayed. There was a rule that was supposed to go into effect in this year from the Affordable Care Act. That was an addition to a program that's been around for a long time, 340B, which is a very sexy name. And under the ACA rule, drug manufacturers found to have, quote, knowingly and intentionally price gouged could receive fines of up to $5,000 per instance of overcharging. Basically, the Obama administration was trying to give this rule teeth, right? You could go per pill or per vaccine in situations like this. This is a big deal, but a real simple one to not get busted for. Don't gouge the price for low income and people, and specifically during an epidemic, which is what it's to protect against. That once the epidemic happens, that you don't start raising the cost of a vaccine. Honestly, this should be like the Scarelli rule or whatever that guy's name is. The dweeby pharma bro.
The pharma douche.
Yeah, it should be the pharma douche rule. That this is the pharma bro. This is the pharma bro rule. Added to 340B by the ACA. Yet another reason, by the way, you're like, why do they keep fighting it? Don't the insurance companies make a ton of money off of the Affordable Care Act? Why do they keep fighting against the Affordable Care Act? It's not because of what was initially in there, but what is triggered if they continue to raise their prices and act unfairly. And that's what they want the right to do again. That's why they want it upended, especially this particular rule. So on his way out the door, Tom Price throws pharmaceutical companies a bone and allows them to continue gouging prices for people who are caught in the middle of an epidemic or who are low income and need a specific prescription drug that should be cheaper anywhere else in the country, but for some reason you live in it is hard to not see that this is the issue. But if you need something like protection, any medications, if you're trying to not use opioid-based painkillers, for example, and you live in an area where the opioid epidemic is really high and the non-opioid painkillers cost more or whatever, they could raise the price of that just for you, just for the areas, so that literally your choice is between a fully insurance-covered opioid or a form of painkiller that isn't, but will cost more because the environment you're in, when the exact opposite should be true.
You ready to shout it out loud?
Yeah. Yes, right. I can hear it. In theory, they can get away with that still, thanks to Tom Price's fix for them going out the door. Wonder what kind of job he's going to land when he leaves. We'll be back. I'm reading, guys, so I haven't frozen.
One minute.
Cool.
Seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Five seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
You know, the problem with Puerto Rico is it's surrounded by water. Okay, a lot of water.
Big ocean.
Water, big water. Let's see if I can... Big water. So much water. You wouldn't believe the water. I guess I thought I had the audio of him saying this, but I can't make it come up. I shouldn't press my luck today, actually, audio-wise. But the big problem was water, ocean water, which is, I don't know if you've ever tasted it, doesn't taste like regular water from a bottle, you know, normal. There's like ocean, they don't bottle ocean water for a reason, okay, folks? For real.
So the problem with Puerto Rico, is that it's surrounded by ocean, and it's an island, according to the president. And that's why the response was slow. Not because a week ago, which was already a week after Maria had made landfall, the White House had no plan for Puerto Rico. No coordination. They had all the organizations of the government, FEMA, DOD, NHS, all of them were working on what their main plans were. White House had no coordinated plans, which is its single job. Why was Donald Trump allegedly elected by the people who think that he should be in office? Because he ran a successful business, right?
Yep,
he knows how to make deals, and he knows how to run a company. And we have stupid people running our government, and we need somebody in there who's smart, who knows how to get people together, make everybody work together, make sure these jobs, are functioning, and that everybody's doing the right thing. And this is his main talent, right? Getting people, I can get people together. I bring people together, folks. It's not that hard. So easy, so quick. Everything's so easy and quick. 10 days into the worst hurricane to hit Puerto Rico in modern history,
This ungrateful mayor doesn't know how good she's got it. These ungrateful players don't know how good they got it. I'm good at bringing people together, folks. I'm good at running things. I ran a big business. I run businesses. I know how to run things.
5 days after Maria hit landfall, White House, no plan for the coordination of the response for Puerto Rico. Arguably, the one that requires the most pre-coordination.
Because it's surrounded by water. Big water. Ocean water. Such big water, folks. Believe me.
And the idea, again, this idea collapses under its own weight with any scrutiny whatsoever. With just, if you give it half a thought. And that is why the sort of blind following necessary to be a Trump supporter at this current time is almost intellectually insurmountable. It's a bridge too far for me, folks. I can't understand how you support this president if the only way it makes sense is if the extent of your patriotism goes to whether people stand or kneel during the national anthem. Which means you are only a patriot for appearances. Which brings us to the Republican Party, which is only patriotic for appearances. Yep. That's the patriotism of the modern Tea Party style Republicans is that it prides itself on unequal protection under the law, meaning that the rules of law do not apply evenly to all citizens, that there is a hierarchy of importance in humanity if you are an American citizen, that we are not all created equal. But the idea is that there are special classes in this country that deserve more safety, more health, more life than others. This is a genuine belief system. Thank you. The
ultimate side, man.
Right. That on the one hand, if you do not stand for the national anthem and you take a knee, not out of disrespect for the flag or the people who served to protect the ideas that flag represents, which is exactly what happens, by the way. The flag is only as good as the ideas and principles that it represents, and one of those is freedom of speech and the ability to protest your government. Colin Kaepernick apparently had a discussion with a vet about, a veteran who specifically was saying, look, if you turn your back on the flag, that's bad. And he goes, what if I took a knee? And they went, that works because it's prayerful and it's respectful and it's a dignified way of saying something's wrong here. The laws are being unequally enforced.
Yep.
It was a nonviolent.
It's not about the flag. It's not about the anthem.
That's right. It's about what they're supposed to stand for. And nothing is more disrespectful to the flag or the anthem than undermining the principles by which that give them meaning.
Or to say that somebody doesn't have a right to free speech.
Well, that's exactly it.
You can not like it all day long, but the free speech is
sacrosanct. It is the essence of this country. It is the primary rule with which we distinguish ourselves from monarchies, from theocracies, from the Iranian mullahs and the Saudi princes and the Kim Jong-ils and all the people that we decry for lack of freedom in their countries, or pat ourselves for being better than because we quote unquote represent Western civilization. Will you cease to represent that civilization if you do not believe people have every right to protest in whatever way they see fit, especially if it's nonviolent? And on a personal level, I think there are better ways, and as a human being on my own, I think there are better ways to protest than this. But I believe in 100% their right to do so, and I applaud them. The players who are participating in this for finding the best way of bringing attention to specifically police violence against unarmed black men in our culture. It is an effective tool for drawing attention to that. And it is nonviolent, and it is wonderfully dignified. And in many ways has done its job, has worked effectively in that way. And the only people who aren't coming around to it are the people who are never going to come around to it in the first place. And the president was tweeting about this while his White House had no plan for Puerto Rico, where the White House will not say whether the president spoke to the governor of Puerto Rico over that weekend, last weekend, which means he did not, because if he could, he would brag about it. There was no way he spoke to the governor of Puerto Rico and didn't mention it. Or the White House wouldn't mention it. It's an absurdity. No plan, no conversation, spent all weekend tweeting more times decrying NFL players for taking a knee during the anthem to protest violence against unarmed U.S. citizens and the unequal protection of certain people in our culture under our flag, under our anthem, under our Constitution, than he ever did decrying neo-Nazis in Charlottesville. The man is a fool, and he's dangerous, and his behavior in this event is increasingly more despicable. And that's why Mike Pence's lawyer had a private meeting with Mueller's team last week. I'm guessing because he wants to come out of this as clean and protected as possible, because he's going to have that job soon. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Thanks, Ginger, for your tweet, by the way. Yeah, I agree Pence is dirty. And I don't think Pence will make it either. And I agree, Carl, Pence hopes he'll have that job. And I agree. I think he's going to run afoul of the entire thing. That doesn't mean he won't make the attempt. Because if you live that full of crap, if you lie to yourself that frequently, it is completely reasonable that that you think you'll get away with it too.
How you have callers, and I got that clip
of
Trump
of ocean.
Puerto Rico surrounded by water.
Okay, yeah, let's play that as we're coming back in.
Hello?
Yep. Hello, check. Can you hear me?
Hal,
Yes. Hello. Wait. Oh, damn it. Whatever. Hold on.
you there, right?
I am here.
Hal?
Hold on. Why is it not going? What's happening?
We got 30 seconds.
All right. I'm here.
Oh,
Hello,
okay.
check. 1
Hal.
second. I hear you. Hold on. I hear you. Hold on. 1 second. Make sure this is in. I don't understand.
Hal?
I'm almost there. Hold on.
Hal.
I hear you. Hold on. I hear you. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So nuts. I don't understand. What is going on? Okay. It's gonna be.
Now back to the radio program Mega Worldwide 773-763-9278.
Welcome back to the show. I love making Lady B worry just right before break. Right as we're coming back.
Oh, man, you should have said. She was like, "How?
What the?
How?
What the?
How?
Oh.
How?"
She's like Dave in 2001. Let's hear that clip of Trump explaining why 10 days after Maria made landfall, they didn't coordinate with all the different groups in the government to make sure that trucks would have drivers. Let's hear it. Let's see if we can play that.
We really have. We've worked very, very hard in Puerto Rico. It's very tough because it's an island. In Texas, we can ship the trucks right out there, and we can do. We've gotten A+ on Texas and on Florida.
Yeah, A+.
And we will also on Puerto Rico. But the difference is this is an island sitting in the middle of an ocean, and it's a big ocean. It's a very big ocean, and we're doing a really good job. I want to go there. Tuesday seems to be the first time we can do without really disrupting first responders and the efforts that are being made to help people. We have shipped massive amounts of food and water and supplies to Puerto Rico, and we are continuing to do it on an hourly basis. But that island was hit as hard as you could hit. When you see 200-mile-an-hour winds, even Texas didn't have 200-mile-an-hour winds, right? But when you see 200 miles, and even more than that, 200-mile-an-hour winds hitting a place, and literally houses are just demolished. It was like tornadoes. It was like having hundreds of tornadoes, the winds. So we've never seen it. Actually touched down as a Category 5. People have never seen anything like that. And it was dead center. I mean, you couldn't be any more. And don't forget, a week before it got hit by another hurricane. Now that one brushed it, but that did tremendous damage too. So Puerto Rico has tremendous problems with floods and with damage and collapse. And, I mean, we're still looking for people. We're still looking for people. But I'm going to be going there on Tuesday, and I may also stop at the Virgin Islands. The governor there has done a terrific job of, I mean, he's been devastated, but he's done a terrific job, and he's been very generous with what he said about the relief.
He likes me, so I like him.
Oh my God, I can't. Okay, wait. Please.
They could take a little bit of a rest.
Stop him. Stop him.
Oh my God, the whole they've been very good about how great we are.
One guy said something nice about me.
He keeps saying wonderful things about how wonderful I am. First of all, don't pat yourself on the back ever during a response while it's still going, because people are turning up dead. We're going to find that people are died yesterday and the day before that and the day before that because they weren't reached no one reached them in time. So until the dust is settled and you know you've done everything you possibly can, and even then, but like at least shut the hell up about congratulating yourself. I mean, how weak must your ego be? Can you imagine if firefighters just literally stopped in the middle of a fire going, "Great job, Gary. You're doing a good job with that hose over there." And then the guy his hose just drifts off and starts spraying into the parking lot. "Yeah, I feel good about how I've been, a lot of people were saying we weren't doing great with this fire, but I feel like, the lady in 2B, she was really nice to us. So we kept the water on, on 2B really. But once
we should go to that one first.
The third floor should go to what one first? Johnny?
We should get where the lady was nice.
Yeah.
We should go to that one.
Yeah,
first.
we should always cover her first, The idea that police would congratulate themselves in the middle of an investigation before they've actually caught the suspect. That firemen would, on the drive over to the fire, start going, "You know what? We got here just in time." It speaks to such weakness on the part of this man that it is almost unfathomable. And then while patting himself on the back about it, totally blowing off the actual response. Literally just, this kind of abstract coordinated effort from nowhere. Just, man, they're doing their job and we're over here. I'll be at the golf course if you guys need me. You guys handle it. I got an A+ for how awesome I did on that thing. And we got to, he even said the reviews are in. The reviews?
Yep.
What? Like it's a show. And arguably it is. This is how Donald Trump views the presidency. What you do is you outsource all the actual work. You let your oligarch friends run all the departments. It works for Putin. It'll work for us. I can't. Yeah. I mean, it's brutal. And by the way, in some cases, we should be happy that's how he's approaching things. Because the New York Times is reporting that, according to Rex Tillerson, the U.S. is in direct communication with North Korea right now. In spite of all this nonsense that Trump is saying, his saber rattling and all this stuff, the reality is this isn't the actual conversation that's being had with North Korea. Tillerson is saying we are probing, so stay tuned. I'm impressed about how he might begin a conversation with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, that could avert what many government officials say is a significant chance of open conflict. We ask, would you like to talk? We have lines of communication to Pyongyang. We're not in a dark situation, a blackout. We have a couple of... What?
You are so silent right now. It's insane.
Oh,
I wish I had a recording of this.
Poor Lady B. I apologize.
Oh, she's losing her mind.
Oh, and it's not her fault. It's nothing Lady B's. Oh. That's so mean. I feel bad. Well, one of the areas, is it getting any better or is it just hell? This is yeah.
It just cleared up a second ago.
Oh, good. Okay.
Lady B still looks a little suicidal. When she looks suicidal, it's kind of adorable.
It is. She's so sweet when she's stressed. I hate when this happens for her because it's not your fault, Lady B. There's nothing you can do. Tillerson says, we ask, would you like to talk?
You should have been more prepared for the hurricane.
That's right. Yeah. There's 100 reasons why this particular cell line might not work for this stuff. But anyways, we ask, would you like to talk? We have lines of communication to Pyongyang. We are not in a dark situation, a blackout, Tillerson added. We have a couple, 3 channels open to Pyongyang. They're what?
A couple, 2, 3
channels. 2, 3 ways. We can talk to them Wednesday, Thursday, whenever they can get back to us. But I mean, this is
after dinner. It all depends what time it is.
That's right. So on the one hand, you've got Tillerson, who, in many ways, has all sorts of issues as far as his corruption. Has all sorts of reasons why his judgment is suspect, especially when it comes to the world of oil and gas. But he seems to have been shocked into steadying himself simply because of...
It does kind of seem that way.
He
doesn't really want to be the guy who helped nuclear war happen on his watch.
Right. It's like Nikki Haley. Both of them, I think, had the,
I've often heard that things are different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office, which is the president's desk. In case you didn't know where the Oval Office is. Remember when Trump said that when he changed, he did another about face on a campaign promise? Nikki Haley and Rex Tillerson seem to be, while not, I'm not an overarching fan of them in general, seem to have been shocked into stability by the seriousness of what they're dealing with. As an ambassador to the UN and as Secretary of State, Nikki Haley and Rex Tillerson have both been like, oh, damn, this is serious. They're getting a look at the intel, they're getting a look at the circumstances, and they're going, look, I don't care what he says. This is crazy. We'll handle it. Just don't pay any... The president's, opinion is his own. Like, Tillerson said that about Donald Trump. And he was right to say it. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take a couple calls, and we've got a happy ending, I think, from one of our regular chatters.
I see him out there.
That's right. OneAmericaAppeal.org. All run together. OneAmericaAppeal.org. I'll tweet the link out on @HalSparks. Is donating and helping and coordinate relief efforts for Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria. And you can help right there. I'll tweet out the link right now. What was that horse? That poor horse. It's been a rough day sonically. Like, the funny thing is that YouTube is not a problem. I mean, there's a hum for some people, but it's not consistent. I hear that some people are getting it, but others aren't, so I don't know quite what the solution is there. It just, I don't know, I'm literally holding my iPod Touch so that if it goes wrong, I can actually hit the reconnect button. Oof. Last week it was so perfect, though, too. That was the annoying part. For whatever reason, or weekend before last. When was the last time I was here? Damn. Last weekend. like it worked better than it had worked in a long time. I was like, oh, maybe they updated the app and the stuff, and suddenly it was smooth again. Like it was. Yeah. I don't know. It's just maddening.
$25 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
All right, so I'm hoping I'm not all cyborg right now. Am I okay? Oh, man.
A little.
You know,
a little.
A little bit? Really?
It's not awesome, I'll be honest.
Oh, damn it. It's just rude. I blame you, Johnny Million. Last week was like the smoothest it had ever been. Honest to God. Oh, it says reconnect. Yeah, so it's disconnected. What the heck? There I am.
Hey, he's back. Hey,
hey. And do I sound okay though? Oh man. So
you sound like you're borderline cyborg.
What the heck? What the heck? I feel like Charles Grodin in bleeding. So you sound now. Oh man. Let's see. All right, I'm unplugging this, seeing if that does it. All right,
Let's go to Seth, even though I know Seth wanted to talk to Hal. Oh, well, there's Hal again.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring Seth on. This is what you've brought us to, Hal.
Right, that we're going to bring on Seth for a happy ending early. Okay, here we go. Bring him on.
Yeah, exactly. Seth, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. Can
Thank
you hear
you
me?
for not sounding like a Cylon. Yes, I hear you perfectly.
Okay. Well, a couple of weeks ago in the chat room, I announced a proposal that we at the chat room posse and Hal should plan a cruise ship with just Hal and the listeners.
I love that idea.
I think I may have found our perfect cruise line for that. Royal Caribbean. You guys hear about it? You guys hear about that?
No. What about it?
No.
Well, for those that don't know, after Hurricane Maria, Royal Caribbean actually canceled a cruise that was scheduled to go on September 20th, I believe, and they sent supplies. They sent water, ice, everything.
Right.
Yeah, and on their cruise ship right to Puerto Rico, and they helped some civilians evacuate the state.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
Then I think what we do is, here's a good idea.
Y'all didn't hear about that. It's been making the headlines.
No,
all week.
Yeah, Seth, we know, but it's nicer if you tell the people when you call in. That's the whole point. Like I was trying to let you give you a little room. See what I did there?
You got all that, Seth?
Yeah.
Nope, I didn't.
Right.
I'm here.
But here's a good idea. I'll add on top of that. If we can make this happen, I'm gonna. If I don't sound too much like a cyborg, my addition to that would be
sweating again.
Oh no! If I
go.
Yeah, thank you. Here's the idea. Am I totally robotic? Is that what's happening? You can always tell when Johnny's laughing. Oh, it's just not a wind. It's impossible today for whatever reason. Oh man, whatever the hell. All right, there is no. This is just Johnny's testing. This is what it is. This is nature. This is them. This is the gods testing Johnny. That's what's up.
What? Hey,
yeah.
You know what?
It's just
Steve from the Gold Coast has waited the entire show.
There you go.
Let's
it's the Johnny and Steve the Gold Coast show right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Johnny and Steve coming at you live.
Thank you. I want to hear you explode. Pull a Bill O'Reilly. I'll do it freaking live.
Yeah.
Live.
Johnny will. I won't. I'm fine.
Exactly. I've got to know whatever happened to Lloyd Bridges. What happened to Commander Kane? Are you guys holding him? POW? What happened?
Right.
It's one of the lifelong questions that remains unanswered.
I picked a bad day to stop sniffing glue.
Yeah.
There you go. But on this whole question of Trump, is it incompetency or is it racism or is it a combination of the? I quite frankly think that it's more so incompetency. I mean, this is not a man who was ever interested in governing. He doesn't understand how this functions. I have a lot of friends in D.C. They had terminated their leases, given their notices. They thought that they were going to be out of a job because they had worked for the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? They're still there.
Yeah.
Not because anybody loves them. It's because this administration hasn't had the competency to put people into those positions, which is what you do in the transition. But again, this is the only administration that has existed in the modern age that cannot fill really important jobs that guarantee you a salary for the rest of your life, because once you hold that position, you're set. And that you'll have a university position, you'll have a seat on a board somewhere. People don't want to be associated with this administration. And to the extent that they are, as you rightly pointed out, people like Haley and others, because unlike Trump, they want a future in this country beyond 2020.
Right.
Trump's days are over after 2020. They want a political future. So they're going to actually do something that's sometimes rational and reasonable. And that's where we get, this sort of break in between what Donald Trump says and does and what some people actually do. So you could take some solace in knowing that, there are some sane people that are doing the right thing, because there are sub-cabinet positions that are lifelong positions, and those people are at the State Department, and they're not going to let somebody do something absurd, despite what Donald Trump says.
Right. I would argue you're kind of making the case that Trump is in some ways this sort of the first multinational president, in that he's a rich kid, second generation rich kid, kind of Koch brother type, that has companies that don't really need to be American to succeed. So if he can find a way to cash in on whatever damage he does or whatever rules he fixes, and I mean by fix, I don't mean makes better, but puts the fix in, he'll actually make, he could care less what the end result is. If he can profit.
And it's important to note that in addition to being incompetent, he's created an atmosphere in which, even if you, for instance, knew that Puerto Rico needed to have these issues addressed a week ago, that if you're in a sort of lower position in Washington, you don't make that call to the White House and say, by the way, we need to act now, because the likelihood in this environment is that someone's going to come after you. And you're not going to have a job tomorrow because you dare to say the building's on fire. And you're going to be blamed for telling everyone that the building's on fire.
Which is what he did with the mayor of San Juan.
As a hero. Exactly. Yeah. So nobody wants to tell him, no one wants to say to the emperor, you have no clothes, because the emperor might chop your head off.
That's
in
right.
this case, you're going to lose your job. You're going to be targeted. So,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. There is a point where this is the first overt profiteering by a president we've ever seen. There's always been some level of mild covert profiteering, and it's amazing how people will go after Clinton and Obama for speeches making money after they were president,
right?
And reserve none of that vitriol for the fact that this guy is selling hats during hurricanes. And doing all these events, playing up the value of membership at his golf courses, where he meets with business leaders and world leaders, discussing secure, classified information with people who are not clear to do it in full voice, a table away from members of that club. He was okay. He left. He's golfing now. Okay. Oh, did I go robotic again? Is that
no? The I just mean the whole Trump president.
Well, yeah. Well, he's golfing this weekend. I didn't know he was golfing last weekend. Did you know this? Because during the whole NFL dust-up, I thought he was tweeting from the White House. And I was irritated by that. I like a lot of people, I was disgusted and upset that he was that all this stuff was going on. It's not like the response for Harvey was effectively done. There's still going to be a lot of cleanup for a very long time there. Much less the fact that Maria had made landfall and had devastated Puerto Rico, and he was doing nothing. He didn't tweet about it all weekend. But he tweeted about the NFL like crazy, and I thought it read like something like an old man in front of the television set just screaming at football, right?
Yep.
And in the end, I was like...
That's what he was doing.
I was like, I thought he was at least in the White House. So the defense would have been... Well, he's tweeting about this stuff because it's really pissing him off, and it means something to him specifically. So his own personal account, he's going crazy on this. But it's in between meetings about dealing with Puerto Rico, right? I mean, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, maybe he's not tweeting about Puerto Rico, but maybe that's because they're having these meetings. And they ultimately did have this big phone call on Monday, right? On my birthday, they have this big coordinated meeting. And I tweeted out the thread, used the hashtag HSRPM if anybody wants to look at it, that Ayn Rand Paul Ryan, the Twitter account, had posted about the fact that the White House, while meeting with all the coordinating all the organizations within the federal government that have a response for Puerto Rico, and the White House had no coordinative input. The single job of the administration to coordinate all these different elements, and they did nothing. And I at least thought, well, he's doing it from the White House. I was under the false impression that this man wouldn't have the gall. And I don't know how I could be so foolish.
You do.
Yeah, but he did. He was golfing. He was golfing while he was complaining about the NFL. He was golfing while he was ignoring Puerto Rico. Love you, Johnny Million. Love you, Lady B. Thanks for putting up with all the noise today. There'll be a post show on the YouTube channel, which will have none of these audio problems. I guarantee it. And we'll see you next time. Big hugs and big love. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Follow the tweet, oneamericaappeal.org, if you want to help with hurricane relief. Oh, my Lord. Bless you, Lady B, for dealing with that. I'm so sorry. Lady B. She probably just hung up immediately like, I hate this. Click. I don't know. I have no answer as to why it was different from last week. Everything is set up exactly the same. I didn't touch anything. The only thing I can think of is that there was a system update on the... I didn't update the iPod things or whatever, unless the app's updated, and I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, love you, Johnny. Love you, Lady B. You guys can't hear me. Okay. Bye. Signing off. See you later. Okay. They just, like, click. All right. Hi, chat room. Hold on 1 second. I'll be back in a moment. Transfer this over. There we go. Oh my gosh. Oh, what? Now what? Okay. The camera not working? What's happening? That's super weird. Okay. I thought Mercury was in retrograde. I don't know what's happening. Seriously, that's hilarious. Look at that. I don't even know what's up. That's hysterical. All right, I'm transferring to this. See if this makes it smoother. Good grief. The business today, man, just digitally, everything's just being such a jerk. I can't figure out what the heck. What is going on technically today? Yeah, it's the solar flares. It might be solar flates as well. We don't know. We'll do it live. The thing sucks. When do the electric prunes come on? All right, guys. You guys straight up cool it, all right? Something's, yeah. Stop the hammering. Bunk, 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 bunk. All right. It seems fine right now. Otherwise, like, again, we go the lowest tech possibly. CPT and introduced me the connection to CPT where the problem lies. The YouTube feed was fine. Yeah, I know. Audio for YouTube was 100% fine. It's the source way we get audio to Chicago and back that is this old school protocol from 100 years ago. Look at that craziness. I don't understand. What the hell? Oh, O'Reilly was the funniest thing ever. Did I actually have a happy ending? Yeah, there's a couple of happy ending things that I was going to do. And dagnabbit. Where is it? Yeah. But mainly... Yeah. Hi, Jen Becky. Don't be sorry you missed the show. The audio was still loud hum on YouTube. What the heck? Do you guys all have a hum? Is it all... Is everybody got one? Hold on. Is there a hum now? Is there a humdinger? What the heck, man? Come on. Come on, buddy. All right. Some people hear the hum. Other people hear the hum. Not bad here. Can I play closing time? Oh, yeah. Feels like it. No hum there. I hum, but it's better than WCPT. Thank you. There's a faint hum in the background. Okay. Okay, so it's not on the mic. Right. Alright, I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay. Hum is gone, no hum. Alright. Man. Speakers. The hum is like Jesus. Some people believe in it and some people don't. You're humming in Georgia. Sounds audio. Yeah. Since 1990. Watch it, Rocky Mountain Mike. That's hilarious. Overall, we can hear you, though. Okay. Phew. I don't know what's up today sonically. That was just weird. Like, clearly Russian troll bots have gotten into the system. We're going to have to see what is driving all this stuff. The FX loop goes back there. So odd. Yeah. I've been humming in the bathroom. White noise must be coming from Trump, right? Right. I think it's finally time for me to invest in one of the bigger apparati for they update. That's interesting. They updated the Report IT Live app. That's curious. Because it looks like they updated the app that I use for because the new OS came out this week, and I don't know if that was good or bad for the app that I used to do radio, and I'll bet you anything that's what the glitch was, because it was so extraordinary. You know, it's so over the top. Like, we haven't had that problem in a long time. Sounds like a funding call, right? Updates were done on my iPad yesterday. I know. I did the update. Let's see. 935. Okay, so yeah, it. Set up to do. What's the current iOS? I have a feeling like they haven't you dropped it. Oh man. Yeah. I have a feeling like you guys don't need it. Yeah, iOS 11 and maybe I guess these guys should be able to. I don't understand why everything, according to that thing, it thinks it's up to date. I'm like, how could it be up to date if there's an iOS 11? Unless these things won't even do. How is it up? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. So that means my iPod Touches have maxed out. That means I have to buy a new one to do the radio show. That's what's up. That's what happened. The app's updated and the system software didn't, and yeah, and I couldn't have known that. So, yeah, thanks, Jen Becky. I know, like, I thought it was like 11.0.01. These are on 9.3.2, and it says they're up to date. So I don't know what the heck is going on. But I bet you there's a new icon for the app, and it looks like it. No, I am gonna grow my beard back out, but I was shooting like a little piece that was gonna be like a bit about Steven Seagal, and I kind of drew on a beard for that with makeup, and it wouldn't wash off. So yeah, it's just that you're just seeing the outline from where I drew it on, because I used a like eyebrow pencil or some shit, like it wouldn't wash off fast enough. So anyways, it's just still there. It'll wash off in a day. Yeah, I was kind of gonna do a whole like slap around Seagal joke bit thing, but we couldn't get the fat suit thing to work or whatever, and it was like it was just it, and it kind of passed. So maybe in the future, though, it'll be pretty funny in the future if I do it. So I might shoot a like just a. It is. I mean, the hair is real, and there's some of it in there. I did grow it out a little bit, but I was like, I wanted it to be that kind of overtly thick, kind of too dark thing. So I drew it like just straight lines and all this stuff, and yeah. So mad at Seagal and boycotting these theatrical releases. Oh, I didn't know you lived in the Czech Republic. Seagal was Russian, must think in Russian. Oh, my T-shirt says, to be one, ask one. So, hi, post-show. Good to see you guys. How you doing? Stop playing with eyebrow pencils. You get in trouble. I know. Yeah. You need baby oil. I know. Like, thanks. I tried. Summer has makeup remover or whatever, and I just did it too heavy. I think so. Okay, Mr. Mason. Yeah. Yeah. I'm now officially in the Scottish Rite as well. So, what is good just for the sake of being able to see that, you know, coconut oil. That sounds lovely. That's not good for your skin, right? Yeah, I didn't use a number 2 pencil, Amos. Oh, and by the way, thank you so much, Natalie and W and Nancy and Julie. You guys EO, great idea about the cruise. We'll see if we can try to coordinate something like another progressive talk cruise. Here's might be good is after cruise lines have restored some of their runs to Puerto Rico or to the Virgin Islands or something, we can go down there. If we could all cruise down there and volunteer and cruise back. I mean, how cush is that? But it'd be a really great use of your time. Firefox, yeah, Evernum. I loved Firefox. And he was trying to remember how to say fire rear missiles or whatever in Russian. It was like, can we invite Kiss on the cruise? Absolutely. I love the assorted. My life loves you for that. Hey, Raphael. Finally got into the chat. Look at you. We can drop off Ted Cruz. Hasn't Puerto Rico suffered enough, Rocky Mountain Mike? Drop off Ted Cruz. We'll bring Rachel Maddow. She's tall. I know. I was on the Progressive Cruise with Rachel Maddow, and I beat her at a game of horse, which is amazing because, A, she played basketball in either high school or college or both, and she's like a foot taller than me. Sorry, I have to step in and keep stepping in and out to work with the handyman. Hey, man, I'm glad you're getting settled. We're just happy you're not in boxes anymore, Carl. Garth Brooks. Yeah, I watch too many old 80s movies. There's no such thing as too many old 80s movies. Ted Cruz should be sent to Cuba to investigate the weird sickness hitting diplomats. I think Alex Jones put her on the rack. We keep getting new boxes. Oh, wow. Well, there are worse problems. I'm from Puerto Rico, and the reason the governor and delegates from Puerto Rico have to be nice to Trump is that they don't have 5 congressmen, 2 senators to raise oil. That's exactly right, Raphael. I mean, I think if the one thing... I did not dunk on her. No, I would never claim that. I just won. But... Raphael, I would say the one thing that might come positively out of this is a genuine move towards Puerto Rican citizenship, or stateship rather. And I think that's obviously it should be the case. Puerto Rico should be a state. It is time it becomes the 51st state. If it's responsible for all these things as a state but gets none of the benefits, that's wrong. And D.C. can clamor all at once about, getting some sort of, protection or whatever. I understand how your state capital not being run like a normal mayorship makes sense because of the security concerns. I get that. None of those rules apply at all to a Republican Congress will never let that happen. I agree. But I do think they could sue for statehood. And I think it would be hard to argue. Puerto Rico's filled with Spanish speakers. POTUS didn't realize they were American citizens. Yep. I think the opening of just think the opening of Saving Private Ryan with the whole movie. All right. Trade Puerto Rico for the South. It's hard to argue that you're the South when Puerto Rico is that much further south, so... Could one sue for statehood? You arguably could, because you could say that we are responsible for all the aspects of statehood and gain none of the benefits. You could sue under the auspice of taxation without representation. D.C. has tried it, right? But there's an argument. It should be D.C. elites still look at PR as a colony. Absolutely, but that doesn't mean how they look at it shouldn't be the root way it's dealt with. People can look at shit however they want. That doesn't necessarily mean the law, should apply that way, Problem is the pro-statehood party keeps kissing Republicans' asses. They won't give PR statehood ever. You got a better chance with the Democrats. I agree, Lord Dracul. Or could have evacuated the island. Yeah, I mean, there's always, there's that Florida aspect where some people just don't want to leave because they're afraid that the people who do stay behind, if they figured out how to stay there, will just loot everything before they come back. So they, and the other thing is you could literally go in there and go, and order a mandatory evacuation of the island. They could have done this with military ships, but there's 3.5 million people, plus down there. So, yeah. Hi, Fancy Free. That's a huge undertaking, especially if not everybody wants to go, and you're endangering the people who want to go down there and actually, like the soldiers, the ships, whoever's doing the evacuation, up to a certain point. You should have had, evacuation availability for everyone beforehand. If they all left, they could all vote in the next election, right? That's the irony, is that Hal with a fez. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know you have to be a Shriner to wear the fez. I don't have a fez. Similar in Spain and Catalonia. What's similar in Spain and Catalonia, Mariella? I'm sorry, I missed the connected tissue of that statement. Proposal: it should be a happy ending entry for every stupid thing Donald Trump does. You're going to need at least 2 more hours. That's absolutely right, Ginger. But fezzes are cool. I don't have a problem with joining the Shriners. I love the idea. They do a lot of great charity work. It's awesome. In the Scottish Rite, I get a hat. I have a hat, but it's not a fez. Perhaps Trump doesn't tweet from POTUS because the Twitter management would refuse to verify on the grounds it has to be a joke. This is telling. If anyone ever bombs us under the Trump presidency, we're screwed. It's every man, woman for themselves. Yeah, I think unfortunately you're right, Julie. Although I think it would be pick and choose depending on priorities, and I think they're kind of counting on that almost from a North Korean standpoint. The idea is that, maybe North Korea will bomb Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, all these places. He's got terrorism insurance, right, on all of his towers. Whereas if they bomb Alabama or something, why would they? But the response would be instantaneous and what have you. That's the idea, that they would pick and choose. If the response to the hurricanes is any indication, that's a genuine fear. Still can't figure out who is sound blasting the embassy in Cuba. I'll bet it's us through the CIA or not. It's not us, Billy. We're not blasting our own embassy. It's either the Russians or Russian or Cuban technology left over from the Cold War being used by a criminal element there. Because one of the things about Cuba not being on normalized relationship with the United States is it allows for criminal activity, money laundering, drugs, all that other stuff to happen. They don't want it to be normalized. There's too many people benefit to say it's, and I don't. There's something about this kind of born identity bullshit that says that there's a mole in every intelligence organization. It's just garbage. Cuban intelligence blasting Justin Bieber at the embassy and is against the Geneva Convention. Speaking of, my wife does a deep dive on Alabama culture, politics week on Pro Left podcast. Awesome. Yeah, everybody should listen to the Pro Left podcast. And I'm particularly fascinated that, having just been in Huntsville, I think there's a very strong chance it could go Democratic if the messaging was handled correctly. If Democrats managed their message a little stronger, and just straight up went for, just start talking about working people. Because that's why these people end up voting against their own self-interests. Most of the time, they're fairly, especially these days, pretty laissez-faire. See you later, Rocky Mountain Mike. Pretty laissez-faire about the social issues, even to the extent of abortion rights. Most of them, are for a woman's right to choose, and morally responding, like to abortion as opposed to legally. But the one area where they keep voting against their own interests or against any other things is, how am I going to keep my job? Nothing else matters if I can't feed my family. So if this guy looks like he's going to do, they think the bigotry actually is more important than their self-interest in the economy. That's the problem. No, I'm talking about the reachables, not the deplorables. But I think you're right about a certain segment. But the average voter in Alabama isn't, as much as we might think so, virulently bigoted or would act on that bigotry in any way. The only reason that they show anything that would be seen as bigoted is when they see construction jobs being handed out by corporations to undocumented immigrants that they think would be their jobs if those people couldn't get into the country. And instead of insisting that the Republican Party, make sure that people are hiring legal citizens or people with green cards or the legal right to work here, instead of doing that, they're just reacting to get them all out because they don't believe that those businesses will end up doing it. So it's convoluted. But I will say that, when I travel around, I'm not, while there are absolutely these racists and bigots, in there, there's a huge, that's why they need to be against the corporate GOP and press to prosecute illegal employers. That's exactly right. But a lot of them have been taught that that's a losing battle, and if you just get them out, it's just businesses are doing whatever they need to make a profit, man. It's the rule. Right? So Jeff Beauregard Sessions is no longer typical of Alabamans. Not in a situation where you have, the bifurcation of the Republican Party ending up in this split vote between Roy Moore and Luther Strange, and the Democrat being within shooting distance of, pardon the pun, of the office. When the Democrat is polling in such a way that they're getting close, there's a huge difference in Alabama in the last 10, 15 years. And if Democrats could come at it like, look, you've been told that these people are your enemy and they are not. The corporations that are illegally hiring people are the people you need to be mad at. And we are here for your rights and your protections, because not only do we think you should be able to get a job and keep a job, but we also think you shouldn't be poisoned on the job. We also think that you have to use machinery that hasn't been safety tested to make sure that you won't lose a hand just because you need to work. Roy Moore is ridiculous, and there's it's Alabama, so the upside of him getting elected is that he taints the entire Republican Party with that garbage, without genuinely tilting the vote. That vote turns out exactly the same. If Roy Moore is in or if Luther Strange is in, that state isn't. It's not like there was going to be. But if they lose because they pick this maniac, all right. If they lose because they pick this guy, it's a terrific moment for both Alabama and for the Alabama Democratic Party. Oops, confused Scottish Rite and the Shrine. Yes, they're very different. Problem is vote suppression in Alabama. It absolutely is, Raphael, and that's why more and more there needs to be massive legal, just lawsuit after lawsuit about voter disenfranchisement, both on the state and federal level, because a vote delayed is a vote denied, to borrow a phrase, and if people do not have the right, thank you, thanks, Robert. If you can't vote because you have the inability to because of lack of machines, or the machines are faulty, or anything, the resources, or there's 100 ways that the properly executed legal, a lawsuit could result in a national holiday for voting, a guarantee of voting machines being and paper ballots, for example, as a backup. I talked about this on Twitter this week about the idea that we could create an optional voter verification idea that you could sign up and go, I don't mind if my vote is known, who I voted for and what. By it's not that it's made public, but that people in the government can see my name and my voting right. But what I would sign up and go, this is my vote. I will vote in my normal precinct, and then I will check to make sure it matched what I agreed to vote with before and after through the machines. And it's a random sampling, so that if people are messing with the voting machines or the tally, it will show up because that received vote did not match that given vote in that moment. And you do it, like I said, you do it as a random sampling. After the election, after a period of time, 30 days, 90 days, whatever the certification period is, that record is expunged of who that vote being tied to that person, so that historically or months later or years later, it's not it doesn't digitally tie to somebody, so that they can be used against them later on if their employers Hobby Lobby or some nonsense, whatever the fears people have about private vote, private voting. But ultimately, I think that possibility of verification or messing with it would straighten up some of the secretaries of state, because they're the most. Your Secretary of State is your most problematic human being when it comes to voting rights. They effectively hold the reins. They are as important in many ways as Supreme Court judges, who your Secretary of State is, because their manipulations and their ability to control the election cycle is more concerning than any other aspect of government, even the governor in a lot of ways, because the governor has to go out of his way to mess up the vote. The Secretary of State does not. There's a paper trail when a governor says, hey, mess around with the vote and help out him or her, right? But when a Secretary of State does it, it's line item crisscross. Everything's vocal. They can just kind of prioritize or deprioritize certain people's rights. Go back to paper ballots. Attending an account can be fun. I agree. There's no particular reason why people can't do across-the-board paper balloting, and that paper balloting doesn't end up, it can be inputted, but that they are maintained until the president takes the oath of office. That physical paper ballots should be held until the president takes the oath, because until that point, that person is not president. So that's how I mail them in, like Washington State, and then check on computer. Right, I agree, Julie. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Driftglass. So the standard should be any federally linked election, and anything that has to do with federally linked elections, meaning obviously your senator, your congresspeople, your presidential vote, also your Secretary of State, because they are in control of federal implementing federal rules for elections. Those four main points should all be governed under a specific set of federal voting guidelines that must be maintained. States, to some degree, can do whatever the hell they want with their state elections. Each state has a constitution. If you want to pick your government, by who can hit the number of clay pigeons or whatever, there's a certain point where, fine. But if you're making a decision about who's going to make, decisions for the rest of the country, that should be under a federal level. Because your congressman votes in a way that affects me, even though I don't live in your state. So there should be federal offices should have a federally mandated standard for availability of voting. Most states that aren't insane would piggyback on that standard and just link that to their ability to vote or whatever. And if they want to have special elections on a statewide office, it would be at a different standard, however they want to do it. And again, if you're Rabbit Hash, Kentucky, you can just rotate people and, you know, let the dog be mayor every so often if you want to. but overall, I mean, that distinction, that federal level, that federal office, since it affects every other citizen, has to be equally obtained. Otherwise, certain states benefit from lack of representation of other voters, and it's illegal. The whole thing is suspect. Remember how the Constitution prescribes Republican forms of government in the Constitution? Yes, we are a constitutional republic. That's absolutely true. But voting rights in and of themselves have been held up in court repeatedly over the years. And even the creation of the Civil Rights Act itself, even though it was deemed as quote-unquote unnecessary in this part of it, the fact that it was ever necessary means that the rights entitled therein are considered necessary by the court as definition, right? So there is total legal precedence for the insistence of one person, one vote guarantee. It is both in application of present law, a guaranteed aspect. It is also because it has been protected, and individuals have filed suits saying they were denied the right to vote and have won in those cases. That breadth of legal work. Billy, you're absolutely right. There is no affirmative right to vote in this country, but the codification of someone not being, they're denying someone the ability to vote in individual cases means that individuals themselves have established that right, and therefore, under the Equal Protection Clause, it applies to everyone. So the people who say there's no affirmative right to vote are taking advantage of the letter, not the spirit of the law, and the spirit of the law has enough secondary legal challenges that it has gone through and been vetted through both the Civil Rights Act and through suffrage, that and the ability for minorities to vote throughout, including Jews, the Irish. Like there's been variant points where people gaining the right to vote, and then citizenry allowing you the right to vote through when people move here and become citizens, that you now have quote unquote the right to vote. That acts as even though it is not constitutionally mandated as an affirmative right to vote, there is enough of those elements to say that legally you have the affirmative right to vote. And fighting that would be unlawful. I agree, Jude, that the Electoral College has to go. I'm saying this is how you do it. Is voter fraud really such a problem that you need all these voter ID laws? When I vote, all I need to do is tell them my name and address. That's right. The reason, Nicola, that the argument you hear from conservatives about why you need an ID to vote is that, and it's weird because they'll tell you that you need an ID to vote, and then they'll tell you these states like Texas and California give illegals, undocumented immigrants and undocumented Americans the right to get a driver's license. And you're like, well, they have an ID, so if the ID is indicative of citizenship, then I don't understand how showing a photo ID, unless it's specifically a voter ID, that you've gone through some sort of vetting, which would cost $1 billion, and would, by the way, you'd have to give these cards out for free. Make sure everyone has one. If they lose one, they have to have the right to show, 2 other forms of ID to get in there. Everybody also says, well, you got to show an ID to get on a plane, or to buy a plane ticket or go through TSA. Those are all optional. No one has to fly in their life. No one has to drive either. You can technically, if you want a bank account, that's still optional. It's necessary in modern life when we take it as necessary, but it is not. No one has the right to a bank account. No one has the right to fly on an airplane. No one has the right to drive a car. These are all economic privileges, whereas voting is not, and it is necessary in a democracy. Flight is not necessary in a democracy, nor is having a bank account. It is not necessary in a democracy. You are not a citizen of the United States based on whether or not you have a checking account. You're a citizen based on your birthright or your gaining citizenship in this country. So, and that's the only qualifications you need. So, but the irony is, and Tom, blessed Tom, and I, had a little exchange on Twitter this week about how, that ultimately a federal ID that allows you to vote would be the key. But the very people who insist that that kind of thing would be necessary also think it's the mark of the beast and teach in their churches that if the federal government decides to give you an ID, it's just so they can round you up and put you in FEMA camps so the Antichrist can come back. So it's garbage. And Driftglass, you're right about voter fraud. Voter fraud is statistically non-existent. And election fraud is the problem. Election fraud is the issue. And the story of voter fraud is in and of itself the fraud. Telling people that we have to deal with all these fake voters, and that's why we need to limit the ability of neighborhoods and to get voting machines or any of the subtle manipulations of the voting ability of the American public. Because we need, we need voter IDs specifically because of this, but we're not going to provide everybody with voter IDs, and you got to have one to vote. Is a poll tax essentially, and so it's the attempt to reestablish a poll tax. Again, if you want to hand out an ID, that's fine, but look at TSA. TSA beginning next year will not accept IDs from 5 different states. I think there might be as many as 12, but 5 specific ones that I know of, because their state IDs don't match the standard of a federal ID. You can't check them. They don't have the little glossy shimmer aspect to it. They don't have 2 forms of fraud detection in them, and so they don't accept them. So you're going to have to get either a passport card, or you're going to have to bring your passport to fly if you're from Kentucky, for example, because they won't meet those standards. Well, if you're saying that people have to have an ID, and by the way, all of these are red states. These are the states crying that we need a voter ID, and yet they won't update their own IDs systems that they provide people in their own states to match the standards of TSA, and we're supposed to believe that they're going to equally pass out or give unforgeable versions of their state IDs to people, so people can show an ID to vote in. Let's say they have to show an ID to vote in Kentucky or Oklahoma. The IDs that Oklahoma and Kentucky are using don't pass TSA level scrutiny because they are too easy to forge. So what the hell's the point of having a document that is necessary to vote if your standards are so low that any teenager can fake one? Pat Robertson need to get a heart attack. Okay, no, we don't call for the death of anybody for any reason ever. Period. End of story. Pat Robertson, when you revolt against Trump, you revolt against God. Because it says in Revelations that even the church leaders will support the Antichrist, and he will declare himself God as he. Oh my God, that's Trump. Yeah, the red states, none of these, they don't take their own government seriously. They're so anti-government until they need it. I mean, it's amazing how Texas Republicans were all against Sandy relief, and now as soon as they get hit by it's not. It's just that the bill had a lot of other stuff in it. You hear people in Puerto Rico saying we don't believe our tax dollars, which they pay taxes into our system, even though they don't have senators and congresspeople. You didn't hear them, complaining about Sandy relief, and then all of a sudden going, "Oh, we need it for us." That's a Texas thing. That's a red state thing. TSA, another good reason for me to avoid America. I don't know. I find the massage quite comforting. Yes, Pat is clearly a hateful moron who commits what I would argue is the greatest sin in Christianity, which is the selective interpretation of the teachings of Jesus Christ for your own for violent political aims. And that bit about where he pretended to take aid relief to Africa and was really there was like 2 crates of it in front of all these products he was selling in Africa. Shampoo, I think, was the big one, right? I don't see any evangelicals helping out Puerto Rico. Curious. Is certainly not insisting upon it. Ciao, humans. Be well, Drift Glass. Everybody check out the Pro Left podcast. Comforting until you hear them slip on the latex glove unless you're into that sort of thing. That's my point exactly. Maybe he's the Antichrist he speaks of. Right. I mean, that's... And the funny thing is like, I think Obama would be a fantastic head of the UN. And you know that the minute he did, though, it's the Antichrist. He's making himself the Messiah of the one world government. He's going to go down to... He's going to rebuild the Temple Mount, declare himself God, and then somebody has to do that for Jesus to come back, so why not him? I always think it's funny when the end times Christians like Pat Robertson, claim that, it's horrifying. He's the Antichrist. Well, don't you need the Antichrist to do all this stuff, or the prophecy can't even happen? It's like people who crap on Judas. Without Judas, there's no crucifixion. Without the crucifixion, there is no Christianity. So at a certain point, Judas is as important to the story as Jesus is. Right? Literally. Arguably the most important apostle. Am I wrong? There's an argument that that's been made over the years that Judas was a member of a very militant group of Jews at the time who thought that when the Messiah came back, he would be a king, sit on a real throne, have real soldiers, not this kingdom of heaven stuff, but an actual material king, and thought, and the idea was that Judas thought he could kind of make, call Jesus' bluff, as it were. Once confronted with these soldiers, he would rise up, smite them all down, and become the king that Judas believed he would be. And then when, I think it was Peter cut off the soldier's ear and Jesus put it back on, Judas went, oh crap, I've caused the death of the person I love the most. I was trying to help, and I've actually destroyed this, and that's why he hung himself. That was the, I like the glow behind how it looks like a halo. Oh, it's sort of appropriate right now, don't you think? But I should be a billionaire because I should win every lottery. I'm surprised if I don't get too much crap because I'm albino and really passes away. What about Osteen? Is he a religious crook or simply inept from time to time? I think he's a pedestrian Christian pastor that is milked the... I don't think he's one of these evil dudes. Like I said, I don't have a problem with Christian pastors in general any more than I have problems with, Catholic priests in general. But if you use it like Pat Robertson does, or if you're a child molester, you belong in the worst kind of hell. And I do believe that religious belief can be very healthy for some people. But hyper-orthodoxy of any religion is anti-democratic, because ultimately you have to choose between the democratic ability of everyone to believe whatever they want to believe, and your own insistence that the orthodoxy be carried out. And at some point, be it the end times or through beheadings, you got to confront the fact that you believe that your version of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, pantheistic Zeus worship, whatever it is, has to end in all non-believers being killed. And if that's the essence of your belief system, then you're not going to survive a democracy. In some parts of America, religion is a business, selling a brand. It's also your trust point, Amos. And it used to mean something. It used to, he's a good Christian man, so I'll do business with him because I trust he's not going to mess with me in the end. Now the problem is, once that becomes the system, it's easy for the charlatans to move in. It's exactly the same type of opportunistic behavior that you see when pedophiles realize that if they become a Catholic priest, they have an available, farm of victims available to them. The first ones may have been driven mad by, vows of celibacy and acted on it, but the next generations discovered that this was a great place to have, an opportunistic victim, base to pull from. Yeah. God bless if you're a believer, Reverend Barbara. Right. I used to like Osteen until every sermon was about acquiring wealth and goodwill from God. That I would say that's, Robert, I would think that's in some ways a direct reflection of the coming back from the 2008 crash. That's people will deal with their biggest fear base and where they feel the most comforting, message will come from. And if people lost their shirts, they lost their houses, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their retirement. So it's understandable that message would appeal to them and become a growth point for anybody who was saying that. And the feedback loop that you're going to get is that made me feel so much better to know that God cares whether I do okay or not. And it's not, it can be violently opportunistic, or it can be genuinely like, okay, this is the message people need to hear, that God doesn't want you to be broke all the time. That's not the point. And you can believe whatever you want about stuff, but like, I've always liked Marianne Williamson's, state about, wealth or whatever, which is the poor are the one group you don't help by joining. That having resources, having a little extra money, having, wealth of any sort allows you to help other people. That, being in the breadline next to the person is never the solution for that, right? So there is something to at least striving, to have extra so that you can help others, right? And I think that appeal and that tithing idea that's been at the heart of American Christianity for a long time in a positive sense is just, this is almost a PTSD version of that after 2008. I'm going to hell, I'm so much in debt, right? Don't forget to praise the Lord crowd back in the 70s, Jim and Tammy Faye, the past, the Luke. Absolutely. So by comparison, these folks are at least overt about it. You know what I mean? They're saying, yeah, you should be able to be wealthy, and it's okay. It's fine. And there isn't anything intrinsically wrong with it. There just isn't. And there was a thought for a long time that it was, and it drove a lot of people away from the church because, again, it was a place for poor people to commiserate and not do anything and blame others or blame the devil or what have you. If you tell someone, look, your life is going to suck for the next 50 or so years, you'll get yours when you die. Right. I don't think you have to be broke for Christ. The more blessed you are, the better for recruitment. Mm-hmm. Love Marianne. She seems sincere. She is sincere. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. What time is it? Jesus. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're an hour post-show. That's pretty normal. How do you ever talk about after death? Where you think we go, etc.? We need to do a chat about that. I'd like to hear your thoughts. It fits into the sim hypothesis. that I think we wake up from this and we've been in school the whole time. That this place is a lesson. That's why it's so tough. I know people who tithe expecting a financial windfall sometimes. Yeah, some people tithe because they expect a direct lottery-like response. Other people tithe because it's goodwill. It is the Christian version of the karmic wheel, right? Okay, now griping about your taxes going to pay for sick people and getting care when you need to, probably dropping horrible bomb. Yeah. Well, Ginger, you raised the interesting point about the idea that, they push this idea that Islam is somehow violent, but Christianity, the Judeo-Christian United States is not violent when, when we're saying, God is on our side, or we're fighting, a holy war, or, Bush is dropping the word crusade. This belief that I don't think there's a single one of these Americans that decry the violence of ISIS who wouldn't both, if their families had been wiped out, wouldn't strap on bombs and do the exact same thing, or participate in beheadings of Muslim, ISIS members if they thought they got a hold of one of these people, right? They wouldn't have a problem cutting their head off. As a matter of fact, I think it was a vengeful act. It was very normal, and that's why you have structured government, is because there is an element of human nature and anger and revenge belief that will carry itself out unless everybody taps the brakes and acts civilly. And that civil behavior requires cultivation. It's not automatic. So, yeah. If you got out of it, the idea that the more good you give, the more good returns back to you is pretty universal to any belief system. It is, but there's also a big belief that, people take advantage of suckers, and that's a big fear that a lot of people have carried around with them, and their individual experience, not their universal love version of events, but their experience with people in their lives oftentimes leaves them with scars that makes them distrustful of that idea, even in the abstract. I don't trust people as much now. Yeah, well, you do trust people. When you're consciously going through the act of trust, you make decisions, and you believe yourself to be less trusting. The reality is, if you drive in traffic, you trust strangers with your life thousands of times a day. So you are very trusting when it's convenient, but when you have time to think it through, you're more discerning, and you think that trust is at a lower rung than it might be, which is probably not the case. If you consider yourself to be less trusting, then then more than likely you are acting trusting more often than you think. Not knowing where we go after bothers me. It's kind of like Julie. It's the afterlife, if you want to call it, or the between life, as I think it would be viewed from a Buddhist standpoint, is the conversation about it is, to me, like sitting in a movie theater during a movie that you've wanted to see, is very fascinating, has all sorts of ups and downs, is incredibly well crafted, and the whole time you're sitting there talking about the snack bar or where you're going to eat after the movie. To some degree, it should be the afterlife is, since you are in no way can control it, should not interfere with you being the best human being that you can, and should be left up to that, in my belief system, because it is an unverifiable. If at some point we found out, it's exactly this after you die, and we did get confirmation of one particular thing or another, it would undercut the sort of validity and intensity of life in some ways, simply because it'd be like if you're sitting in a horror movie and somebody next to you kept going, that's just ketchup, that's fake, that blood's fake, totally fake, all these effects are fakes. Study physics, Julian. You can be bothered on levels you didn't even know existed. That's absolutely right. when the plate is passed and folks see you not putting anything that's pressure. Absolutely. It's why they pass it instead of having a box at the door. Because if you have it at the door, people coming late can put nothing in the box because everybody's backs, they're facing forward. That's absolutely. That social pressure is why they started passing the plate. But it's also because it is all. You could also look at it as a way of calling people out who are verbally pious and financially full of crap. So you can have somebody who's rich, who comes to church all the time, pats themselves on the back for being, an upstanding member of the church or whatever, and then gives nothing to making sure the doors stay open. As you get older, circumstances change, your mind changes, especially you have no support around you, just believing sometimes something does not help the situation change. Oh, be well, Lord Dracul. And the soul afraid of dying and never learns to live. Right. Sunday, November 13th, some of our friends of mine and myself are starting the second National Heroin Day. All right, cool. Why, thank you, Ginger. I appreciate that you think that that's a good analogy. It shames those who can or won't give and makes royalty of those who do. I agree, but it also shames the ones who can give and don't. And the people who have very little to give, who put a quarter in, there's an element of reverence for them as well. In a real situation, if everybody's full of shit in the church, it's not it doesn't matter what you give or who you give for. Everybody there is full of crap. But if there's an element of people, if the church is real and the sentiment is real, the people who are who give in those circumstances are what they give and how they give to the limit of their ability is sort of equally respected and equally understood. So you just don't want it to be over for life or whatever. Okay. Give when you can. Always good when you have a little extra money for yourself. Right. Mortality is the best and worst concept for all human beings everywhere. Right. And the confronting of that mortality is a healthy act once in a while. Yeah. It's funny because at a similar lesson dealing with masonry, just last night actually, and I can't go into it, but I do believe that there's an importance that we take seriously, that every human being ends up in the same place. And a lot of what we do in our life is arguing about sort of, and I'm trying to find a way to word this in a way that it gets it across. But the idea is that there are two things that are not directly related to your mortality that you have some effect on. One is what you leave people, including specifically, if you want to just say your inheritance to the inheritance that your children get, on the one hand, but also posthumously what you've contributed. Every contribution you make in life is an act of immortality, aids and helps the world. The good that you do, the ripple effect of the good that you do is immeasurable. The damage will heal in some ways, but ultimately, what you do in your life, good, is the only thing that is of lasting value. And again, whatever financially you leave your family, or be it extra money or lack of debt when you go, is really the only thing that you actually have. What you quote take with you, and it's always been this idea that Preach and pass the plate. That's right. We pass the plate. Everybody here does the great thing, and I equally love everybody who who's given the super chat and whatever they got to contribute. I mean, and I feel like everybody who does contribute, who's able to give less or more, doesn't. I hope that that each one is equally valuable and appreciated for doing what you can. Like, that's always. It's not what you take, it's what you leave behind, right? And here's the thing. This whole thing, like, and this has been a kind of a running theme for me, both as a comedian and in hearing people talk about, this kind of poverty, is next to godliness somehow. When I've seen desperate people in poverty growing up that did some desperate shit that was awful. And I've seen some wealthy, well-to-do people take care of people who weren't taking care of themselves. So this idea that having or not having money somehow automatically makes you good or bad is dismissive of reality. But I will say that, when they say about wealth, like, you can't take it with you. You sure as shit can take poverty with you. Dying of starvation or preventable disease or without insurance in our society, that's taking poverty to the grave with you. That's lining your coffin with poverty. So this idea, like, acting like you don't understand why people would strive to have more all the time, to have too much money or excess money or whatever, understand that part of that comes from people going, I don't want to die leaving debt to my children under any circumstance. And I certainly don't want to die early because I didn't have the money to save myself. So individuals acting in such a way that they, want to accumulate, and I'm not talking about blatant, violent greed. I'm talking about people like going, okay, I don't, bust my ass at work and get everything I can to have in my life, so that, my rocking chair days are full of good stories, that and wisdom I can pass on to my children, and and they don't have to worry about who's paying for my funeral and all that kind of stuff. That's an upper middle class and middle class legitimate feeling that permeates a lot of the decision making. And this idea that hey man, you can't take it with you, so don't work those extra hours. And I'm not talking about you can't take it with you, so don't cheat people out of blah blah blah. I'm talking about people who work hard genuinely and spend their a lot of their waking hours trying to further themselves or reach. And I think that Osteen appeals, Joel Osteen, or Osteen, Joel Easter appeals to a lot of people who have that mentality, who are like, the worst thing I can do is leave debt to my children. The worst thing I can do is, be unable or to die early because I did not have the means to take care of myself, to feed myself well, to medicate myself. And the fact that that's an issue that people have to make that decision is, you could say it's morally wrong, and I would agree with you, but it is a reality, certainly in modern life, until we have a food replicator that can crank out anything you want, and it's all of a high nutritive value. This is going to be a concern for a very long time. So the idea that people shouldn't work extra hours or be quote unquote workaholics because you can't take it with you, these people are making sure they don't take it with them. A lot of times what they're making sure they don't take with them is poverty and debt and adding that weight to their family after they go. But striving to accumulate a degree of wealth is a common reaction to those who have experienced poverty in life at some stage. The Scarlet O'Hara syndrome. Absolutely. And I wouldn't call it a syndrome. I would call it a reaction, and a valuable one. It's okay. Not knowing what happens after we die, I've come to the conclusion that for me, nothing could feel better than the simple act of kindness to a stranger, mastering the gift of listening. I agree. But again, the act of kindness has more value than the just listening. And that might be my hyper male version of this. What is it called? The gospel of prosperity strikes me as the gospel of blasphemy. I would agree, but I would say that it does not have to be. They are not mutually exclusive. It's the fight between it. Again, Buddha came to the decision that it was the middle way that was the most valuable, because he'd been destitute and he'd been rich, and the middle way was the happiest and the most fulfilling. And I think that the prosperity gospel is not directly blasphemous, because with it they preach good works, at least in theory. I would argue that what Pat Robertson's version of Christianity is blasphemous. I have no hesitation in saying that, and watching this man over the years and knowing the fraud he has committed, the prayer requests with checks in them being thrown out after the checks were removed, and the shampoo shipments to Africa disguised as aid. That is a violent and virulent form of blasphemy. That is antichrist behavior. Simply saying that God wants you to be rich is disjointed and to some degree maybe goofy, but not actively blasphemous. And again, it's a total debate, and everyone can have their own feeling about it. And ultimately, it doesn't serve. The conversation is unnecessary because it doesn't change the part of it. The question is, what do you do with your feelings about that? How does it, faith without works is nothing, right? So how do those feelings translate into behavior? How do you look at, what do you walk out of your church and do, ultimately, is the thing. And that act of listening is terrific if that's all that person needs. But sometimes you are confronted with a situation where someone is asking you to listen to their problems, and the reason they've chosen you is because you're a shit listener and you'll tell them that they're being an idiot. Sometimes, the path of life brings people to a bad listener, to a person who goes, look, everybody else is going to listen to you commiserate about this junk, but I'm going to tell you abuse isn't love and you have to leave him. Right? Or her. That sometimes fate brings you a bad listener. So, but the act of being loving in whatever you do is the key. It is, listening in and of itself can be a passive act of dismissal, or it can be the most important thing in the world, and it's a case-by-case circumstance. And again, that's where the revolutionary talk or the anti-establishment talk, or screaming commie at the top of your lungs, or even using the phrase Antifa, or calling everybody a fascist or everybody a Nazi or whatever, recognize that whenever you're doing that, you're operating on a group descriptive, and you have to be willing to, once it comes down to it on an ideological or emotional or singular point, fight on the merits of what your principles and your ideas are. You have to know your details. And the same thing is true of sort of these religious ideas. Like, yeah, Osteen believes in these big, highfalutin, God wants you to be prosperous ideas, and it's fine. But what makes that Christian is it would have to be your behavior. And therefore, if there's no application that makes it specifically, why are you wealthy? Why are you well-to-do? Why has God blessed you in this way? If you're not applying it in a way that's Christian, then you're effectively less honest than Tony Robbins, who, by the way, is Christian and occasionally speaks of God and his stuff, although it's not the primacy of his argument. I would argue that you could say that Tony Robbins' argument is more genuinely Christian than Joel Osteen or those crowds, because he doesn't sell it, he just states his beliefs occasionally. Whereas the people who are in the sales business, that's where it becomes questionable, right? Here's the problem. Humanity is superficial. We care more about things how things looked in their inner workings. I disagree with that on premise, Ginger. I kind of have to. Because humanity isn't superficial. Cultures can be superficial, but humanity itself is not. Humanity, pushes whales back into the ocean. Humanity dives into icy rivers and pulls people out of trucks. Humanity is a huge thing. Cultures can be superficial because people feel like their only option for survival is based on certain behavior patterns or what have you, and they can be, passive or active beliefs. Cultures can be superficial. Humanity itself is too extraordinary to package. Human nature. I also don't think human nature is that way either. I think, again, cultural affect, groupthink, those kind of things can point in those directions. But human nature in and of itself, oftentimes you will see someone who is outwardly every bit the racist you would expect from some, rosy-cheeked redneck in Alabama who rushes towards a car that's on fire, not caring whether the people inside it are a minority or gay or have just had an abortion or have just been divorced or are Lutherans when they're Baptists or Jews or what have you, that black police officer protecting that the white supremacist dude who was stabbed. That, I would say, is more indicative of human nature. And so, there you go. A person is smart, people are stupid. Yeah. That, I think that's closer to the truth, Ginger. And I think, racism is the antithesis to the teachings of Christ. I would agree. And it was basically, though, written in a racial vacuum. Christianity itself was not. Christ's teachings arguably were written in a racial vacuum, in an area where everyone was pretty much looked the same. Jesus himself in his travels when he was younger, maybe not so, but certainly during the time of his teachings and the places he went. That being said, as it spread across the world, like every other religion, it came face to face with those tribal and racial differences. Christians support him, and all he had to do was say, I'm Christian. Yeah, Carlin actually, E.O. Carlin specifically said that, anyone can firewalk, it's simple physics. Yeah, well, Nicola Lane, the confidence is not based on simple physics. Neither is, quite frankly, common sense. Tell that to the doctor who was drummed out of the medical establishment for suggesting that doctors wash their hands before childbirth, because he noticed that when doctors went from a cadaver to a birth, the babies died. Now, he believed that because there were Death Ethers basically on the hands of the doctors, he didn't understand the concept that it was a bacteria or septicemia or any of those things. He just knew that there was a correlation. He didn't know that the cause wasn't mystical. It didn't matter. But he was drummed out of the medical establishment for insisting that doctors wash their hands, because he was insisting that somehow doctors could be filthy, right? and later on, he's effectively, think of the lives that were saved because they finally came to support that idea, and how many people died in that window. It wasn't, material physics didn't change the fact that, the human confidence is based on this. Quantum physics is completely counterintuitive. Yeah, this is absolutely true. 'Cause, if you rely on classical physics, which everybody does to walk. The germ theory of disease was just being developed. That's right. But those germs were seen as ethers, spirits, that kind of thing. became standard. I remember when it was considered disrespectful to wear the hug. Absolutely. Well, this is where hippies took that. I mean, talk about an act of protest that changed how the flag was to be worn. Was that hippies started wearing parts of the flag to make the point that they weren't, spitting on soldiers and calling them baby killers. They were against the war. That was an act of patriotism, right? That changed. During the Civil War, they used to boil horses' hair to make it more pliable, and stitching officers' wounds. Officers somehow got fewer infections than common soldiers. That's right. Whoops. There we go. It's so funny because that other camera that was blinking for some random thing while this stuff was going on, like there was clearly a technological ghost having. Women's suffrage thing got to be processed. Absolutely. So that the idea, though, that, that we must avoid, I believe, at all costs, to refer to anything we disagree with, simply because we disagree with it, as tyranny, as fascism, what have you, so that when we actually are confronted with tyranny and fascism, the words mean something. You see this with Trump all the time, this idea that, when he goes the best about something, and it, or the when people are talking about Trump like this is the most hideous, virulent, blah blah blah, until the next hideous, virulent, blah blah blah. Like everything, we lack all relativity in language, to borrow a physics phrase, and it's important. Dr. Oliva, you probably know the guy's name off the top of my head. What was his name? Damn, it's right on the tip of my tongue. The true story. Look up the term Nazi. Right. No, the guy who suggested washing your hands, who was Ignaz Semmelweis. Ignaz Semmelweis was his name. A guy who suggested that that doctors wash their hands. And Ignaz became like a name for somebody who was dumb for a long time. Oh, Ignaz over here, right? Still is. And it comes from that time. Someone who would make a stupid suggestion. Ignaz Semmelweis, German doctor, I think, living in England, suggesting doctors wash their hands if they, especially if they've been working with a cadaver before they assist in a birth. That's right. So, but the point being is that, thanks. Yeah, everybody grabbed it just as I was saying it. You can watch me as you guys, because it's so funny how you guys are 2 minutes behind the chat coming up. I can actually watch it happen. Yeah. So everybody went and looked it up. I thought Ignaz was a cartoon cat. It kind of is. It's meant to be a dumb name. Hungarian of German ancestry. You're right. So it's fun watching the chat room say it as the video catches up with me. Saying it because I'm about 2 minutes behind you guys in there. It's so funny. About a minute, yeah. Anyways, the like Sebastian Gorka, right? And my ex-girlfriend, who was also Hungarian. So let's see. For the record, I don't think it's inaccurate to warn of the dangers of fascism when it comes to Trump. I just think he watered down the term for so long. Few take it seriously. I agree, but again, I think like for Trump, fascism. Okay, so fascism is a useless term when it comes to talking about Trump because it does not impact the very people that follow him, and the people who are against him don't need any convincing that he is trying to be fascistic in his governance, especially with his nonsense like the players should be forced to stand or they should be fired, right? That kind of idea. Classic fascism, you know. But nobody takes that seriously, that he's going to be able to institute a policy, a fascistic instituting a policy where he, football coaches or what have you are going to have to, and team owners are going to have to fire people who won't stand for the anthem. Like that's never going to happen in our structure of government. And if it did, it would require us being invaded by Russia or China to make it happen. It's not going to happen. Okay, not with our Constitution in place. It's not going to happen. That being said, him instituting a corporatist structure that is based on crony capitalism and kleptocracy, absolutely a possibility. And the discussion about that is a way of, if you talk about it in those terms, that's a phrase that will reach people who support him. You call him a fascist, they don't hear a word of that. And most people, even on the left, are aware that while he's acting in a fascistic way, there's no teeth in that dragon. It's just not there. But his ability to hand over the government to multinational corporations, that's a conversation that even, ardent Trump supporters have worried about openly on CNN. So the word fascist doesn't mean anything to anybody in the traditional sense because it's been, but kleptocracy, corporatism, the argument that Trump will hand over control of our government to multinational corporations is a real fear on the right, and one that can be expressed to them that would, in a way that would bring them around to understanding this. Calling him a fascist, zero effect. You saw a ghost fizzing out. We didn't see anything. Held on. Rosello spent most of his adult life filing. Governor Cullen, ghost where? The door moving? It's entirely possible. You have more faith in them than I do now? No, I've just seen them. And again, I'm not talking about the hardcores. I'm not talking about the idiot white supremacists who are clamoring, the David Dukes of the world. They're not reachable. That's the basket of deplorables Hillary was talking about. The people on the fence, pretended to be offended by the deplorables, conversation, and the right used that as a weapon, kind of like they saw it as an in, like the guns, clinging to their guns and their God comment that they misused from Obama, or you didn't build that. They saw that as an exploited phrase. But the reality is there is a way to reach people who, like I said, only voted for him because they thought their job was on the line and everything else falls behind that. If I can't feed my family and my kids, I don't care. Nothing else matters. And they voted for that. And those people can be convinced, no matter how stupid you think they are to start with, they can be convinced and rightly rightly concerned that that Trump genuinely is operating in collusion with not just the Russians, but with multinational corporations to exploit the country and basically sell it off. If we enabled the UN to tax MNCs. What do you mean by MNCs? It went by too fast. I couldn't see the thread that you guys were talking about. While my Republican side of my family bitched about Obamacare for an hour, I came over for 2 minutes to ask if we could fix it, and they totally stopped the discussion and discussed it. One person disagreed. Or threatened to empower them to get all that tax. Oh, yes. Okay, I see. I mean, look at our FBI trying to recover funds stolen from Ukraine. Partly that's because those funds were spent here in the United States, and we don't want to be on the hook later on if the Ukraine decides to file some sort of legal action financially, with the World Trade Organization or something which we are signatory to and we would be affected by, that would upend the entire real estate market in New York. So it's better for them to be in front of it. Except they knew Trump was a Russian puppet before voting for him. We did, but that doesn't mean that they bought it. And people will believe a lot of bullshit if in defense of some other idea that they think is more important. I mean, look at Jimmy Dore and Susan Sarandon thinking that Trump would be better for the revolution than electing Hillary Clinton. All the people who are in trouble in Puerto Rico right now, all the individuals, the civilians who've been killed by the loosening of the rules of engagement by the Trump administration in the theaters of war we're involved in. All those people dead and dying because the likes of Susan Sarandon and Jimmy Dore and the people who followed them and believed them or believed that ideology didn't vote in strategic states throughout because they thought they were taught to hate Hillary Clinton that much, and they thought Trump would be harmless or okay, or that if he was, I mean, those people believed something so virulently awful that you could argue that they can't be convinced otherwise. And people are dead that would not have been if Hillary Clinton was president. Lots of them. But there is a big group of people who think that, who have talked themselves into Hillary Clinton would have been worse for the world than Donald Trump. And they keep telling themselves that. So, this, Yeah, and I agree, TLK Knitting, that there are a lot of people who voted simply because they vote Republican. They didn't really think that and they've been taught that Hillary Clinton was a murderous pedophile, and that she and her husband, bathe in, in the bloods of newborns, and they, had Vince Foster snuffed and blah blah blah, like all these high level conspiracy theory kind of things are so normalized in our culture that there was a big where there's smoke there's fire element with Hillary Clinton, which by the way never applied to the fact that she got, she's almost single-handedly responsible for pushing S-chip through, right? Yeah, I don't think Susan Sarandon would admit that there's damage, and I don't think, and I know Jimmy Dore won't either in those situations. I think that he still believes that no matter what happens, Trump being in office is better than Hillary being in office. And again, he's got 250,000 YouTube subscribers. Hillary lost, all the states she lost that were blue states by 77,000 votes. It absolutely has an impact. But the point is, I'm saying that there are people on the right who, fall into this I'm never going to believe otherwise crowd, but there's also a big bunch of people who, and I'm torn about this because right now they did this matchup this week about how Hillary would win 47-42 right now if they reran the election, and that means that about 5% of people switched parties, would switch their vote, and part of me is like, I'm glad they're coming around, but the other half of me is like, to hell with you that you were that stupid you couldn't see this coming. Oh my God. Like, how were you that deluded that you thought that was even an option, right? Jimmy used to be on Young Turks, and they broomed him for being a maniac, so that should give you some indication. Matt Damon said, give Trump a chance. Even Colin Kaepernick was talking about our emails. Yeah, and it was all garbage. That's ridiculous. Yeah, and anybody else who was who was effectively bouncing out this, there's no difference between the parties, things like, again, this is this sweeping generality crowd. It's lazy. Yeah. I wasn't in politics, but when I wasn't paying attention and heard Trump talk, I perked up and was like, what? Yeah. Well, Iowa 505, Iowa 505, they shouldn't be mutually exclusive, but you can kind of generally think in terms of, long term, it is what's best for you if it's best for the country in general in those regards, It just, it doesn't help to be I always joke about the Republicans that they don't even know how to do selfish right. But you can be selfish with your long-term plan. It's like so I did my goals this week, because I do my goals for my birthday, because it's my New Year's resolutions happen on my new year, right? So Sunday night I'm drafting up what are my kind of goals for the idea or whatever, and everybody has long-term goals and short-term goals, and the idea is that most people are impatient with their short-term goals and patient with their long-term goals, when the opposite should be true. You should be patient with your short-term goals so that when you're laying the bricks, each one, you are getting each one of them right day to day. Patiently going through the process, chipping away at what you're doing. And impatient with your long-term goals, because that is what will make you put in strategic effort every single day. Most people are patient with their long-term goals, someday, and impatient with their short-term goals, meaning, I got to get to the end, but if I don't have time but I also have to do this, and I need to get this done today, and you know what, I'll go to the gym next week, and right? That's the opposite. Be impatient with your long-term goals and patient with your short-term goals, right? And so when you vote, you can be impatient with your long-term goals. I want universal health care, right? And patient in my short-term goals. What will actually get this to actually happen over time? What will bring it about for real? Not, if I can vote for it this time, I will, and if I can't vote for it, I'm not voting. Like, that's impatient with your short-term goals. I started designing a theme to my new year on my birthday every year because of you. I always start from sending it in the bricks in September. Oh, thanks. So, anyways, if I can teach you guys anything, it's be impatient about your long-term goals, patient with your short-term goals. Every day. Patient with yourself, patient with what you're going to do. Okay, today. It's gym today, no rush. I'm going to do this. It just happens. My impatience to be healthy comes from my patience each meal, thinking about it as it's in front of me. What would a healthy person eat? Not like, because the impatience of the short term is what drives people to make kind of flip. I can't. I'm overwhelmed. I can't do it. If I can't do it, I'm not doing it at all. That's right. So, in my opinion, black folks have always voted patiently. I agree. In general, I mean, except for the ones that voted for Trump or serve in his cabinet, I suppose. No group is totally monolithic. No resolutions go with the flow. That in and of itself is a resolution. You have resolved to not have them, and you have resolved to go with the flow. What is it? Rush at their most Ayn Randian. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Right? So you think overthinking through falls short on logic sometimes? I'm told I overthink sometimes. Overthinking is often, it's like the seeking of perfection. Oftentimes it's an excuse for not doing. I'll just spend my time, because we do have, one of the interesting things generationally that's happening right now, and also geopolitically that's happening right now, is people are thinking that worrying about something is actually helping it. There is this thought that if I fret about the thing, I am somehow contributing to it getting better. And it's just not true. It is as helpful as dismissing it overtly. I don't care about that. What's the difference between like, well, I'm very worried about it? Unless you actually do something with that worry, or you do something with that concern, it means nothing. But there's and therefore, the illusion of control, right? If you have this belief that I'm very angry or I'm very upset about this thing, and I consider, by the way, social media, like tweeting, marching, those kind of things, actually actively articulating that thing. Calling your senator, especially very specifically active things, is not the same thing. But I think a lot of people think that the rest of the time they spend worrying about something, is contributive, helps in some way. And it doesn't. Unless you resolve to do something, or resolve to be something, which is more important, meaning that you resolutely determine that as a human being, you will live your life within a field of ethical belief, that you'll circumscribe your actions within boundaries that you believe are healthy and good. Then you're not doing anything. And if your worry or your agitation or fear makes you short with other people, makes you dismissive or angry with people who aren't deserving of that anger or whatever, you're part of the problem. You're contributing to the negative aspect of all you're doing is taking this negative evil thing that is occurring in the world, stewing it into a different shape and tossing it off onto someone. So if you're mad at the world, or you're mad at Trump, or you're mad at some political active thing, and it makes you a dick in the line at at the gas station or something, or gives you road rage, you're no better than the source. You're just a filtered version. Someone criticized me on Twitter saying I should do something instead of just criticizing, like, why do you say I'm not? Wars are won through multiple attacks, not just one and done. That's right. Hey, the Russians consider Twitter and Facebook asymmetrical warfare, so there's obviously a battle to be fought there, and pushing back is incredibly important. One of the best things you can do whenever you're confronted with a troll online is simply respond with bot and stop talking to them. Because the real ones, it will irritate like hell, and the trolls will stop responding immediately, the fake ones, and it shuts them down. And if everybody starts going bot, people will know to stay away from them. Those 8-digit, Vladivostok Russian accounts. Habit of voting Democrat every time. Yeah, it's reasonable. Worry drives you to find a solution and implement it, then great. Otherwise, all it is doing is self-destruction. That's right, Nicola. I agree. Because I don't talk to people who are short with me. I don't like to argue. Okay. Trying to let my anger fuel my need to achieve for my family and myself. That's absolutely. Exactly. Just because you don't brag about your activities doesn't mean you are not doing something, right? Handed out pocket constitutions. That's a great way of doing it. I'm curious where you got the pocket constitutions from, because the Liberty University and the Heritage Club were handing out pocket constitutions as well, and they had a preamble that tries to dovetail the listener or the reader into believing their version of the Constitution. So I'm curious if you just got where you got those, because I'd like some, just plain ones. Trolls hate when you ignore them for even 5 minutes. Right. Just literally respond by saying bot and then do not respond again. I'm serious. And then eventually it'll start to stack up. If that became the standardized response, just saying bot and moving on, it would help immensely. Oh, shit, it's 1:45, and I've got a writing session in 15 minutes. So I got to go. Anyways, I've got work to do among this. But I also, I literally, I do my thing on Twitter and all this other stuff, and I do the show with you guys every weekend for free, ice skating up a hill against technology as best I can. But there's really a, why are you calling me a bot? No bot.
You're the bot. If anyone's the bot,
But far from it to be stand in the way of your writing. So that's my advice on that part of it. But also, just for you guys who are here in the chat for this or whatever, really germinate on that idea of being impatient with your long-term goals and patient with your daily goals. And another way of being mindful is patient is mindful with your daily goals. Be mindful about them. And when confronted with the, especially when it starts to like eating and hydrating yourself, these are primacy. Go, okay, I'm going, I have to have a meal. What's the best option I got in front of me? It's the best thing I can do for myself right now. I'm not kicking my own ass. I'm being patient with this. What's the best I can do for myself right now? And the same thing, what's the best thing I can do? Go get a glass of water. Go drink a glass of water. Or a bottle of water. Or however you do it. So, anyways, take care of yourselves, guys. I adore you. I'm going to do the supplemental show this week, too, for just you guys. I'll figure out when we can actually do it. But, and then I'm going to Kentucky to participate in a skeet shoot with my dad for the Scottish Rite in Kentucky, which was going to be an adventure because my dad got all invited to it and wanted me to come because I'm now a Mason and a member of the Scottish Rite. So it was really cool. Anyways, you guys are terrific. Cultivate that idea, though. And if you don't, or if you haven't, or if you're so inclined, the easiest way to do kind of a goals setup is you're kind of your 3 or 5 most important areas, your family, your career, your finances, your adventure, and your learning are kind of the main ones that I go through. Well, over the next year, what would I love to experience? Over the next 5 years, what would I love to have acquired, as a skill, as an ability, be it a language or anything else. And then over that time, how can you day to day patiently chip away, just one brick at a time, just putting those bricks in. It's like if you had a wall to build and you're like, Jesus, how do you build, or an entire castle to build? Like, how do you build this? One brick at a time. Every day, 3 bricks. And you look back and you're like, damn, I've done a bunch of stuff. Think of all the stuff you've looked back on and you realize how much you've accumulated by accident. So, impatient for your long-term goals, patient on your short-term goals. Putting those bricks in place oh my gosh, I'm already using Masonic, actual masonry. Practical, mechanical masonry isn't a thing. But this goes back to this Will Smith thing about his dad making him and his brother build a wall, one brick at a time when he was a kid to teach them a lesson. It's still true. So, anyways, take care of yourself, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. And Julie, I'm glad you're with us and feeling better. And Carl, go tell the handyman to get on it. Okay, bye.